Committee meeting to order February 16th. We have a nice long agenda today, but we'll work through it. Please just, ask all the questions you want. It takes the time that it takes, but everybody will
Can speak a lot.
If everyone has had an opportunity to read the minutes from last meeting, can I have a motion to accept?
I'll make a motion to accept the minutes.
I'll second that motion, Chair.
Thank you. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Privilege of the floor. Is there anyone here to speak to the privilege of the floor this morning? If so, please come down forward. Not seeing any. We'll move into our local law. Local law introduction 3-23, a local law amending local law 1022, establishing a county legislature for the county of Chautauqua reapportioned on the basis of the 2020 federal census.
Good morning, Patrick Slagle, County Attorney. This local law, I think, has been well explained in previous. There was a public hearing on it. Again, essentially, when the reapportionment plan was established using the U.S. Census blocks, it was a technical glitch that caused some of these census blocks to go outside the municipal boundary lines. So the intent of this local law is just to make technical corrections to place them where they belong, and to further state that whenever there's a municipal boundary line, a railroad, waterway, that's going to be what divides up the legislative district. The written descriptions that were in the local law that you already passed are correct. This just makes those technical corrections to further show the intent. Again, in looking at the map, this wasn't discovered until you really zoomed in, and then you see like a wavy line that obviously was just a computer glitch.
Anyone have any questions for Patrick this morning?
Yeah,
Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman. Patrick, these two changes, one of them involves, what, 2 people, and one involves no people?
Correct. I think there's a total of, there's 3. One was discovered that actually didn't need to be adjusted, but
Okay.
there's only 2 people, and it was clearly not intended for them to be pushed over into a different legislative district by almost looked like a U shape it was cut out, and it doesn't affect any kind of voting or.
I am.
I'm
Yeah.
District 14, so I'm in favor of it.
Yeah,
You're gonna give me 2 more people, huh?
it wouldn't shift, from the previous, the current legislative district to the proposed. It wouldn't shift any kind of balance of power if
Yeah,
anyone's
no,
worried about.
Understood, it's just minuscule.
Exactly.
And you have been in touch with the Board of Elections, you've gone over these changes with them?
Yes, and the planning department has been very, very helpful in this as well.
Okay.
And former county attorney Steve Abdel has also consulted with us on this.
I'm fine.
Any other questions, comments? Okay, thank you, Patrick.
Thank you.
Item number 2 on the agenda this morning is tabled resolution amend 2023 budget to implement the Overland Trail Phase 3 project using funding from the American Rescue Plan Act.
Good morning. Drew Rogers, Deputy Director of Public Facilities Engineering.
Good morning, Sam Zafuto, Fiscal Supervisor, Public Facilities.
Thank you, guys. This was tabled last month because all ARPA projects were really pulled, so we're glad to be moving this one forward this morning. So can you give us a rundown?
Sure. Due to the additional funds being available for ARPA project submission, DPF Parks submitted a project request to rehabilitate a section of the Overland Trail that runs through the Harris Hill State Forest. This section of the Overland Trail through Harris Hill is a very popular portion of the trail. Hikers, mountain bikers, hunters use it quite a bit. The bridges located within this section of the trail have fallen into a state of disrepair that resulted in a portion of the trail being closed for much of the last summer. In addition, there were sections of the trail that are quite susceptible to erosion. So this project would allow for repair to the bridges and reconfiguration of the trail to reduce that potential for erosion. The project would be a collaborative effort between county parks and not-for-profit groups that have already worked on sections of the trail, such as the Western New York Mountain Biking Association. And this project, at least this portion of the project, is anticipated to cost $50,000. And it's a part of the overall plan to rehabilitate the overland trails.
How big are these bridges?
They're not really that big. I mean, the part of this work would be to actually analyze them and try to eliminate them as actual structures and put in cross pipes and grade the trail, grade over them.
Any other questions, comments? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Next resolution, number 3, tabled resolution, amend 2023 budget to implement the Waterways Master Plan project using funding for the American Rescue Plan Act.
Okay, this is another project that DPF Parks submitted for ARPA funding on. This would be a project with Chautauqua Watershed Conservancy to have a study completed on the Chautauqua River and the Martin Cobb Waterway and look at kind of the overall picture of the waterways. And as part of the project, it's got 2 components: the study section that looks at the waterways and kind of its overall use, and then the other portion of it is to do a cleanup of kind of the larger debris that are blocking up the waterways and get a clearing effort completed on that. This project is estimated to cost $105,000.
Anyone have questions, comments?
Mr. Chairman,
Please.
when we talk about the Chautauqua River, you're talking about everything would be below the Warner Dam in Jamestown?
If you don't mind, can I bring Chautauqua Watershed to answer some more questions on it?
Good morning. Tom Laniers, Director of Conservation for the Chautauqua Watershed Conservancy. Sorry, somebody forgot his lunchbox this morning at school. Yes. So the intent is to reactivate the blueways, the major waterways, Conowanga Creek and Casadega Creek. Currently, the Chautauqua River is not part of the Martin Cobb waterways, so it's not part of the county park system. The idea, though, is that part of this plan is to actually explore the opportunity to actually add the Chautauqua River to the waterways so that those potentially could be also eligible for state funding later on. If feasible, this could create the opportunity to connect the county's major waterways, the recreational waterways, to Chautauqua Lake, which obviously would be a major asset for the system as well, to be able to take your canoe and go from Chautauqua Lake all the way to Casadega Lake and such. So the intent is to develop a plan to assess the entire waterway system, the major waterway system in the county, to ensure, first of all, safety for human health and properties, but then secondarily also to prioritize the needs for the system to make sure that we can activate it again for recreational purposes.
Yeah, I'm familiar with the Casadega Creek to a point where if you come out of Casadega Lake and you go to Redbird Corners, where you have minimal things you have to go around, but you can make it. But then from there on to go to Gary is like impassable. I mean, every 10 feet there's a tree across the thing, or it's in bad shape, and nobody does that. So that's the sort of thing you're going to kind of survey that channel, and then of course come back and say, well, this is what it's going to take to get it cleaned up.
Absolutely. So the intent is that we would allocate roughly a third of the requested funding to actually create the plan to do the assessment. And then the remaining funds would be used to actually address the most urgent needs, the most dangerous hazards, to really open up as much of the waterways as possible. The reality that we're facing right now countywide is that emerald ash borer, which has been around for 5, 6, 7 years at this point, has left a lot of dead standing ash on the banks. All of the smaller branches have already broken off. You see them everywhere, just big standing dead trees everywhere. All of those are coming down right now. The last 2 years, and certainly the next 2 or 3 years, we're going to be seeing a lot of large debris rolling down the hills, ending up at the bottom of the hill in the waterway. So you're right, the waterways are currently not maintained, and they're just not maintainable. They're not at a shape where routine maintenance will actually get the job done. We need to truly assess, massive backlog of maintenance, but also the added challenges of having all of these dead ash trees that have been accumulating over the last few years removed first before the system can be maintainable by the county again.
Yeah, I was just standing there and an excavator took, 30-inch trees out of the creek in a certain area that I know of. It was, so
Yep,
it's a lot
it's
of
that,
work.
and
So.
it's beaver dams, activatable, right? Maybe not all of it is truly activatable, but we don't know at this point, so that's another thing we need to look at.
That's the one question, Mr. Chair. Those ash trees, are there any value to those at all? I mean, maybe you could harvest them and.
Sure, yeah, we, so Chautauqua Watershed Conservancy, did a major cleanup in the Chautauqua River earlier last year, and all of, I would say 90% of the lumber that we pulled out of that river was ash. Most of it was just piled on the banks with a come and get it sign on it, and most of it walked away. It's perfectly good aged firewood at this point. You can't move it anywhere just because it is infected with emerald ash borer.
Just curious.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks.
Any other questions, comments? So next year I can take my kayak through there. All those in
plan.
favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Thank you.
Thanks, sorry about that.
Proposed resolution number 4 is amend 2023 budget to implement the Sherman Shop fuel system upgrade project using funding from the American Rescue Plan Act.
So again, part of the ability to re-request for ARPA projects, Public Facilities submitted a project for the Sherman Shop fuel system. DPF currently has a capital project to rehabilitate and replace components of this system. The project would replace below-ground tanks. They're nearing the end of their life expectancy, and we want to replace that with an above-ground system. The associated fuel dispensers and operating system would be upgraded as well. The project has been designed. We had put it out for bid at one time. It was well over budget, so we value engineered, tried to change some things with the design, and then took it out for estimate again, and it was still well over budget. So this request is for an additional $250,000 to supplement the existing capital project.
No chance of going back to the design board to lower it anymore.
I don't think so. We've looked at several different options. It's really the cost of materials now and the availability of things that are, tends to drive the cost up even further.
Any questions, comments?
Drew, is the Sherman Shop the only one that has this fuel problem?
It's the only one that has the below-ground tanks, yes.
Okay.
Any other questions, comments? All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Next resolution, number 5. This resolution has been amended. There is an amended version on your desks. The resolution is amend 2022 budget for the year-end reconciliation South and Center sewer districts.
Good morning, Tom Walsh, South and Center Sewer District Director. This account is the Employee Benefits Administration, an overage of $510,000. This is directly related to the Gatsby account, and Kathleen just stepped out. Oh, okay. I was gonna have Kathleen explain where this comes from as far as an enterprise account.
I can explain it if she's
Okay.
busy. No, I'm
Go ahead.
kidding. Kitty, you wanna explain the Gatsby?
The overage of the Gatsby account? Sorry.
Wasn't paying attention, sorry. Or the Gatsby, appropriation is related to our post-employment benefits. So, for the enterprise funds, specifically the sewer districts, they have to record it as an expense every year, whereas, you know, for the general fund, it's more of a balance sheet, liability, adjustment. But it's just for the health insurance benefit after retirement, so it's recorded, as an expense.
The item was budgeted, it just had to be moved from one account to another, correct?
Well, go ahead.
I don't,
Well, what we budgeted
Okay.
was far less than that, and that's basically depending on the market. And when the market is failing, then we actually have to pay more.
Yep, what is that difference?
I-
That, the difference is the 554, 250.
I can look up the exact budget is, I will look it up now, I think it was around $175,000. So what you see in the resolution is what needs to be adjusted for the entire classification, not only for that one particular account. Idly, in fact, last year's result was negative, it was a negative expense. And so our budget is just based on a historical trend, but we always acknowledge that the actual results can be vastly different. So in 2022, our budget was $114,000, and the actual expense for the GASB 68 was $623,000. So it was over budget by almost $510,000. And unfortunately, you'll see the same effect in all of the enterprise funds.
Committee questions, comments?
That was basically how I would have explained it.
Took the words right out of my mouth.
But the other thing I did comment on during public facilities is that it's not a immediate cash cost to us. We are building a liability on our balance sheet to cover future costs of pensions. So obviously, it's not a favorable result, but the results, as I say, they could be vastly different in 2023, and in that case, we again would make an adjustment to the liability that we're carrying. So it's not something that was actually paid in 2022.
I recall having these discussions during budget time, and how does our 2023 budget compare to, are we gonna do okay?
we would have used our best estimate at the time, so like Kathleen
Yeah.
said, it will fluctuate, so we do our best to make a good estimate, but, you know, an actuary actually, you know, prepares a calculation every year, so,
Yeah, and that's another important point to stress is that this expense is based on a very complicated formula that's supplied to us by the New York State Comptroller's Office. So we have to follow the guidelines that we are given from the Comptroller's Office. And so we use their guidelines, their formula to come up with the expense.
Any other questions? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Next resolution, proposed resolution number 6, authorizing application to the New York State Office of the State Comptroller in relation to the extension of the South Chautauqua Lake Sewer District on the west side of Chautauqua Lake from the hamlet of Stowe to the southern bounds of the North Chautauqua Lake Sewer District.
So the map in front of you outlines Phase 2 of the West Side Sewer Extension. Completing Phase 2 will then sewer the entire west side of Chautauqua Lake. And this is an application to the state comptroller to approve the West Side Extension Phase 2.
Questions, comments? Everyone okay?
Yeah.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
I can't be distracted, I'm trying to concentrate.
Next resolution, number 7, which also has been amended, and there's an amendment copy on your desks. Amend 2022 budget for year-end reconciliations, environment, landfill.
Morning, Aaron Gustafson, Deputy Director of Public Facilities Environment, Landfill Manager. Just like the sewer department, we are rebalancing our 2022 budget. We had to increase some appropriation accounts. Contractual environmental landfill, a lot of that was our fuel costs, some lab services, some vehicle maintenance in-house, some higher electric bills, a few building needs like overhead door repairs and stuff. Employee benefits, again, the GASB is the biggest and portion of that, if not all of it. And personal service, recycling, that's a matter of just personnel allocations. A couple guys had some overtime that are allocated to the recycling account. Went a little over, one of our guys had a raise, went a little bit over what was budgeted. We're decreasing the same account, so in the same points, we tried to balance them first, which did take care of the personal service account. Took a little off the other two, and then what we'd like to do is increase the revenue accounts. We were fortunate enough to have a little extra there to cover the rest. So we will be balancing it all in-house with the budget of 2022.
Comments, questions? It's always good when we can balance in-house or within a budget, so. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Next, resolution number 8, amend 2023 budget to implement the landfill trailer purchases project using funding from the American Rescue Plan Act.
So similar to the highways, some funds allocated to ARPA spending were no longer needed for the originally designated projects, so the landfill put in a proposal to purchase some trailers. It's something that we felt would ease and reduce the financial burden to the landfill equipment, thus the burden to the users of the landfill, allowing us to spend more money in other areas on our capital equipment account. Update trailers to new safety standards. We do a lot of work with our trailers. We'll rebuild the entire floors, we'll rebuild cross members. We do a lot to keep them going. We keep them a long time. Our fleet's just getting older and older, and there's not a lot of opportunity to get grants for MSW trailers. There's opportunity for recycling, which we've taken those opportunities. Unfortunately, those trailers are tied up for 10 years. So it's not like we can buy them under the recycling program and then 2 years later turn them over and just keep using that avenue. So we asked to ease our financial burden by purchasing a couple through the ARPA plan. It fits the project, it fits the guidelines for ARPA, so we applied for it.
How many trailers do you have in the fleet roughly?
I have 19. Wrong paper. I have 19 active. I got it wrote down here. 19 garbage trailers currently that we can use, and I have 8 recycling. Any day I'll have 9 at North County, but we might fill 15, and we've filled that many. South County, I have about 6 or 7, and we might fill 4 or 5 or 6 that day too. West County's 4, we'll fill a couple. And so they're constantly in transient and turning over. And of course, we have inspections, repairs, downtime. We have recycled a bunch of our old trailers that are no longer repairable, to try to minimize that and put some money back into our accounts for this, but,
I have a question, Mr. Chairman.
Yep.
What's the lead time once you order these?
that's gonna be a good question. If you saw, I did have, a quote last year. They didn't really give us a great lead time, but I'm gonna guess it's gonna be close to a year. It's the way a lot of these have been lately.
Do you think there'll be any adjustment in price at that point in time?
I'm hoping there's not a lot of adjustment in price since this bid to now. There may be a little bit, but, you know, every little bit helps us, so.
Thanks.
Any other questions, comments? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next resolution is number 9. This also, there's an amended version on everyone's desk. It's amend 2022 budget for year-end reconciliations, North Chautauqua Lake Sewer District.
Good morning. Matt Olbeck, Director of the North Chautauqua Lake Sewer District.
Good morning.
So as everybody else has been saying, we had some overtures. One was the Gatsby Pension Fund of $105,000. We had a couple major repairs that came up. A bearing went bad in a screw pump. It ended up getting into the shaft. That was around $44,000 to repair that. And we had a sensor for our UV system go bad that was roughly $16,000 to replace that. There was no repair for it. We moved the money around best we could, but unfortunately we were unable to get enough in our budget, and we would have to increase the use of fund balance by $106,920.
Anyone have questions, comments? A little easier to go after a couple have already explained what the problem is, so.
A lot
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed, carried. Thank you. Next resolution, number 10, amend 2022 budget for year-end reconciliations, North County Industrial Water District Number 1.
And same with the water district, the pension was 12,527 over what was budgeted for, so, but we were able to move money around for that within the budget.
Any questions, comments? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Next proposed resolution, number 11, is amend 2022 budget for year-end reconciliations, Portland, Pomfret, Dunkirk Sewer District.
And there was a little bit of personal services there that we were off, but $34,000, $34,316 for the pension. And again, we were able to move money around in the budget for that.
Questions, comments? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Thank you. Next proposed resolution, number 12, is authorized supplemental agreement number 2 with New York State DOT for PIN 5761.83.
Drew Rogers, Deputy Director, Public Facilities, Engineering.
Sam Zaffoto, Fiscal Supervisor, Public Facilities.
DPF has a funding agreement with New York State DOT for PIN 5761.83. This is for the replacement of the Hopkins Avenue Bridge over the Chattacoin River in the city of Jamestown. The project is funded with 80% federal funds, 15% state funds, and 5% local funds. This resolution is to authorize supplemental agreement number 2 with New York State DOT to move the project into the construction phase. The construction phase is estimated to cost $896,000, with the federal share of $716,800, a state share of $134,400, and the local share of $44,800, which would come from the DPF capital bridge account.
Questions, comments?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Drew, one of the things I seen, because I live down in that area and travel that area, it just seems like that those bridge projects just go on and on and on. Is people taking a look at that to make sure that we are shortening that up as much as possible? And I'm not saying it's you,
Yeah.
but, you know, that the other bridge just, it seemed like it took on life of its own and
Yeah.
never really got finished, and all of a sudden one day it was, you know.
It has a lot to do with the availability of steel. So that is driving a lot of the duration of the project. You try to work around that as much as you can, but there's just a point where you can't, and you have to go forward with the preparing the project so that when the steel arrives, it's ready to put the beams on and complete the project from there. So that's a large part of that.
And do you work with that group of people when they're actually constructing the bridge itself?
Another engineer in our office is the direct contact. Yeah.
Okay. If you could just relay that message.
Oh,
quickly.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm just saying.
Yeah.
I'm just saying.
Oh, yeah, I mean, we hear it too.
Okay.
Any other questions, comments? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Next, proposed resolution 13 is amend 2022 budget for year-end reconciliations, public facilities, road machinery division.
Yes, good morning. This resolution is to balance the accounts in the Public Facilities Road Machinery Division. Road machinery is the division where both fuel and vehicle maintenance is. We had previously amended it this past October, adding funds at that time, but we did not amend the revenue. There was some uncertainty with it, so this is to balance the accounts here at year end.
Questions, comments? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Next proposed resolution 14 is amend 2022 budget for year-end reconciliations, public facilities administration, and snow removal, CO Roads D Fund.
Yep. Once again, this is to amend the budget for the year-end reconciliation. It's taking overages in both rock salt and a small overage in contractually and administration and balancing it with savings and personal services from maintenance of roads.
So your overages, you have overages and all that stuff.
Yeah, most of that was in the rock salt division for purchase of rock salt at the end of the year.
Cost is higher than anticipated, correct?
Correct.
Not necessarily the usage, but just the cost of the actual product itself.
The 2022 usage was a little high, but the biggest driving factor at the end of the year was a big increase in the cost per ton of salt.
Yeah, we were paying $81.99 the entire month of December for rock salt.
Up from what?
It was
Roughly 73.
70, yeah, it was in the mid-70s last year.
Any other questions, comments? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Next proposed resolution 15 is amend 2022 budget for the year-end reconciliations public facilities A fund.
Yep, good morning. This is also to reconcile the accounts for the divisions in the A fund. The two that need reconciling were both carts and building and grounds. It's being balanced by savings at building and grounds and the parks division to close the year out.
In the the appropriation accounts that you are using to balance, you know, just a rough analysis of why we have extras in all those accounts, you know, especially like, you know, just didn't get the projects, just didn't have the people to fill the positions. Some of them are stealing more.
For the savings that we had in parks, there is a full-time position that is split between parks and the highway. It's a road maintainer position. It has been vacant, unfortunately, with recruiting issues for some time. We also we're not able to hire our full complement of seasonal, so there was also savings in there for the parks. Unfortunately, we just did not have enough applicants this past summer. And then the rest of the savings basically were through the building and grounds contractual through savings that they had.
Do you see that you'll be hiring those people this year? Well, we just approved some ARPA funding for some parks and trail maintenance.
Yes,
Now you're gonna be
actually,
able to get the
we
work done.
have an offer to make this morning to a gentleman who would actually be assigned to that position I just spoke about.
Good.
The offer's not been made yet, so I don't want to go any further,
Understood.
but we have been asked to make an offer.
Good. Any other questions, comments? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
Proposed resolution number 16 is amend 2022 budget for year-end reconciliations unified courts.
Good morning, Kathleen Dennison, Chautauqua County Budget Director. I do not administer the court's operations, but I am responsible for budgeting for them, so that's why I'm here to talk about this resolution. The Unified Courts is kind of an odd group of departments. Most of the expenses of operating these facilities are in buildings and grounds, but these departments do hold the casualty and liability budgets for these different facilities. And our casualty and liability expenses overall were over budget countywide, and so some of that gets allocated back to these departments. And since that's really the only budget in there, if it goes over, we don't have any options on, we have very few places to look for the money. The Unified Courts, there is a department in Unified Courts that holds the revenue, the reimbursement we get from New York State for operating these facilities. But unfortunately, the revenue was under budget, so I was not able to use revenue to accommodate these overruns in insurance expenses. So the resolution is balanced by using a portion of our surplus in sales tax income.
Questions, comments? Thank you. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Proposed resolution number 17 is amend 2022 budget for year-end reconciliations information technology.
Good morning, John D'Angelo, CIO for the county. So we're just settling up end-of-year accounts, as you've been doing all morning. A couple things I wanted to highlight. So our 1610 office services account, we went a little over budget on employee benefits. Reason being, we had a change in benefits during the year from in health insurance from a single to a couple. And then we did go over budget a little bit in contractual, primarily around our network security. There's some funding that we anticipated that didn't come through. However, we were well under budget on our contractual on the communication side of things. So we're able to cover that gap with those funds. So it's the more and more we integrate both IT and our communication system, which is our desk phones, the more kind of they overlap. They're really network devices, the phones we have on our desks. So there's a lot of crossover between expenses on those two accounts. We're seeing that more and more. Any questions?
Questions, comments? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Carried.
Thank you.
Thank you, thank you. Proposed resolution number 18 is transfer of foreclosed properties, Chautauqua County Land Bank Corporation. Is anyone here to speak to that this morning?
What's that?
Land Bank.
I could just say they're two demolitions, so it's pretty straightforward. I guess I did say it. Yeah, I could say it, and I did say it.
Two demolitions in the city of Dunkirk. That's
Yep.
what I mean.
Looks pretty straightforward, and looks like it'll be a good thing to get a couple sites cleaned up, so.
That's fine.
Any questions, comments? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Proposed resolution number 19 is amend 2022 budget for year-end reconciliations, Board of Elections.
Good morning, Donna Sanderson from the Board of Elections.
Mona de Blasio from the Board of Elections.
Thank you.
And we're here to amend our 2022 budget, as the expenditures have exceeded the budget in the amount of $126,509. And we will be using the sales tax revenue to balance that budget. Our budget is primarily over due to the additional countywide election, which was due to the resignation of Congressman Reed.
It's a lot of money to run an election, huh?
Yes, it is.
Yeah. Questions, comments?
Mr. Chairman.
Please.
Donna and Mona, is it?
Momina.
I'm sorry.
Momina.
Mona? Okay. Folks, this is just an aside. How are you coming with recruitment and retention of election inspectors? Are we doing okay here in Chautauqua County?
It's difficult, it's somewhat difficult to find recruitment. We're lucky enough to get our reoccurring poll workers every year, but as they're starting to age out a little bit, the full day of elections, both for primary and general, it's difficult.
But we do have split shifts. They don't have to work a 16-hour shift.
We do.
We do, but we have to have enough coverage throughout the day, and unfortunately, we don't have enough split shift inspectors to cover that full day.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
Mr. Chairman,
Please.
is the hourly rate set for those workers, is that set by the state?
I do believe that, no, it's not. There's a choice that every county can choose to pay. You can pay a maximum of $300 a day for inspectors and/or the minimum wage. And then we had a local law that where we pay our coordinators that actually run those sites for us and oversee things, an additional $3 above the minimum wage.
So do you believe that the wage that you're paying is holding back from people coming forward and saying, I'd do that for the day?
I don't believe so.
Okay. Ramona, is that true?
I agree. I think the long days is probably what hurts us the most, the 16-hour shifts. I think.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Well, and in my own community, I know the people that work that has worked the day, and some of them are no longer with us, or they moved, and it's probably so you're losing people just
Yeah.
through nutrition, I guess, and gotta have new people to say yes. So.
And I have to say, some of it too, I think that scares them. They do this once or twice a year, although we provide training, because by law we have to once a year. and things are moving forward technology-wise, kind of scares the older inspectors a little bit.
Yeah. And I think the additional scrutiny of around elections themselves also is overwhelming and makes people more hesitant to come in and do it, especially since, like Donna said, they're only doing it at most 2-3 times a year for our school elections.
Well, you guys do a good job. Thanks for everything you do. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Elections are very important.
Thank you.
Thank you. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next proposed resolution 21 is 20, which has also been amended, and there's an amended version on your desk, is quitclaim deeds.
Good morning, Kim Moline, Director of Real Property Tax here at the county. So the packet in front of you today with quitclaim deeds has to do with properties that did not sell at our auction. So we put them up on the website and offer them there to the public, and if people would like to make an offer on a property, they are able to, and then we bring them to you guys for approval.
Anyone have any questions or comments regarding any of the properties?
Mr. Chairman, just in the administrative services, I made mention, if you look on the list of purchasers, there's cheap lands and cheap homes, and this doesn't have anything to do with Terry Nebel, all this cheap stuff.
Are you sure?
But it raised a little bit of a red flag to me, not being critical of the real property tax or anything, but they're buying about $200,000 worth of taxes owed for $15,000, which is okay. But I did some investigating, and I gave them a call. They're out of Florida. As you can see, their name is on a lot of properties. The good news was the guy actually called me back, which I thought was fantastic, and he gave me a little history. It's kind of an interesting company. This is what they do all over the country. They buy foreclosed properties cheap, and then they turn them over cheap. I don't know if that's real good for us in the long run. I did tell him my concern was I don't want to see him back on the tax rolls in 2 years. But looking up New York State properties, I'm gonna say they had 60 or 70 of them listed, and they were all sold but one. So I kind of vetted them out a little bit. Give me a little confidence, give us a little confidence in what they're doing. So there you go.
Had they purchased any in Chautauqua County before?
Yes. Yeah, he said pre-COVID they had participated. I asked him if they physically came up here. He said no. Which they can, like you said, do it all over the country now, so.
Yep.
But him calling me back again, I thought was huge, because you usually don't get callbacks. So, if anyone noticed, just a lot of those cheap listings, I feel better about it.
Are they the same? There's Cheap Lands Incorporated and Cheap Home Finders.
Yeah, they're all the same. If you go on their website, they have
Okay.
cheap drain cleaning and cheap tree removal and cheap
Skates.
cheap skates. Yeah, they have some expensive skates,
I know.
but a lot of cheap skates, roller and ice.
Oh, well, thank you for researching that, Bob, because as I do look at the purchasers usually, I wonder, sometimes, and I go, well, yeah, I noticed that, so thank you for providing us.
And Mr. Chair, if these folks didn't purchase these and would be stuck with these properties, so.
Yeah, and
I mean,
they
it's-
would go back, we would try to sell them in this year's auction, but if
Yeah.
they didn't sell last year, probably aren't gonna sell this year either.
No.
Would be stuck with them for a year.
Yeah.
So it's a good thing that they're bidding on.
Yeah, hopefully they can move them and you know, it's a positive thing.
Well, it
so.
just stuck out to me because there was so many of them that they purchased, you know, so.
Thanks for looking into it.
Oh, no problem, yep.
Okay.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next resolution, proposed resolution is 21, transfer American Rescue Plan Act spending plan budgets from 2022 to 2023.
When we prepare the budget, in general, the budget does not include, the adopted budget does not include ARPA projects. And they are added to the budget as they are approved. And this resolution is to transfer remaining budgets for approved projects from 2022 into 2023. So these adjustments would all be projects that were put into the 2022 budget, into the operating budget, but the projects are in various stages of completion, but they are not complete, so there are still monies that are left over and available to spend, so we have to put those appropriations and the associated revenues into the 2023 budget. And there's one kind of anomaly in this resolution. You'll see that there's a decrease in the use of fund balance. That's because one of the projects had an open purchase order at the end of the year, and so as part of our year-end closing process, that appropriation is automatically transferred into this year, but the revenue attached to it does not automatically transfer. So you'll also see that the amount of the appropriations is lower than the revenue, and that triggers the decrease in the use of fund balance. We're adding more revenue in 2023 to catch up with the appropriations that were already transferred there.
Anyone have any questions, comments regarding this resolution? Pretty straightforward, so these projects will keep continuing, and hopefully all of this will get spent and they'll get finished.
That's
So,
correct, yes.
All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Next, proposed resolution number 22, amend spending plan in 2022 budget for Chautauqua County projects funded by the American Rescue Plan Act.
This resolution would pertain to projects that are no longer needed or projects that have been completed and had a budget surplus at the end of the project completion. You'll see that there are 3 projects on the list that have been canceled or have been deemed by the ARPA advisory group to be no longer needed based on consultation with the project directors. And that would be the purchase of doTERRA pouches, the paving project for the Emergency Operations Center, and the Phase 2 South and Center Chautauqua Lake Sewer District expansion. So those projects are being removed from the ARPA spending plan. Only one of those was actually budgeted, that's the paving project. So in the budget amendments, you'll see a decrease in appropriations and associated revenue for capital project 1620.25249 of $250,000. The other 2 projects that are identified as canceled, they had never been budgeted, so there's no need to amend the budget for those cancellations. And the other changes are associated with projects that came in under budget. Most of that, as you can see, is due to in the DPF large equipment category. Fortunately, some of the things that we purchased were less expensive than anticipated.
Can you speak to the EMS paving project at all? I know that when we okayed that project, there was a little scrutiny around that one. Why did they elect not to complete that paving project?
We just double checked with Noel Gutman, and he said he thinks it's something that would be valuable, but just felt that there were other things that were a higher priority. He has made a number of new requests for ARPA funding for the Emergency Services Department. So I think just a change in priorities. And also, when that project was pitched to the Chautauqua County Planning Board, of the capital eligible plans in the ARPA spending plan, that one actually scored the lowest. So there was some concern from the planning board that, you know, this is a good idea, but not a great idea, or not a great need, let's put it that way.
It was, to recall, it was to add a place for clinics too, to be able to utilize.
Kind of a
right, to
drive-through, yeah,
clinic
a drive-through
for-
clinic capability, yes.
Yeah. Any other questions, comments? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, carried. Thank you. Next proposed resolution, number 23, is setting salary for motor vehicles administrator.
Hi, my name's Emily Blevins, Deputy County Clerk. So for the setting the salary of the motor vehicle administrator, basically we're bringing back this job title and we're going to be promoting one of our current DMV supervisors. So we aren't going to be adding a whole new position. We're just going to be spending a little bit more on one person. Right now, with the salary change, she's going to be about midway through grade 14, which is about an 85-cent increase to what she's making now, which for the remainder of the year is a total of $1,170.
And there's no new hiring of a new employee, correct?
Correct. There won't be any more health benefits or anything like that. The total of adding, or yes, the total of doing this position is $1,170 for the remainder of this year.
Other questions, comments? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, carried. Next proposed resolution 24 is the amend 2022 budget for year-end reconciliations, county clerk.
Okay, so for this one, pretty much the same as everybody else has been saying. We overspent in a few accounts, but are able to make up for that with underspending in other accounts. As for details, in the county clerk's office, we went over on personal services, which we had some turnover last year that wasn't expected, so therefore not budgeted for. So that's a big part of where that came from. And then the other amount that's a little bit higher is our contractual account, which has to do with our record-keeping system. Basically, everything that we enter into the system has to go through a verification process, and then we're charged by the company per document that they review. We had a higher number of documents that went through that process for 2022 than the year prior. So that's a big portion of where that came from. And then the DMV, we had turnover in the DMV. We ended up turning 3 part-time positions into 1 full-time position, so we had leftover money there that we were able to put towards this, so it's all staying within the department.
Good, very minimal changes, so that's good. Questions, comments? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next proposed resolution is number 25. This resolution has also been amended. There's an amended version on your desks. It's amend 2022 budget year-end reconciliations CS fund liability insurance.
Hello, Kitty Crow, Director of Finance. So the, just as a FYI, the adjustments to the resolution were due to some later entries that were made after the resolution was pre-filed. The CS fund, as a reminder, is where we aggregate all of our liability insurance premiums and claims and such, and then those are allocated out to departments based on various methodologies. And in a couple of areas here, we had some increases. The 1930 account for judgments and claims, we had, one-time legal expenses that were in excess of budget. Those fluctuate year to year, and we just happen to have more this year. And then some other flood-related expenses were recorded in this account, although we did set aside a separate account for the flood-related expenses over at the HRC building. Those are offset by insurance recoveries, but part of them were recorded under the 1930 account. Under 1931, that is where the rest of the expenses so far that were recorded in 2022 were expensed. And again, the insurance recoveries revenue increase, the $100,000, is offsetting those expenses. The actual claim is probably going to be, in the several $100,000 range, but the insurance company did give us an upfront payment in the beginning to offset some of our initial costs. So that's why we got some of the revenue in 2022, but we'll have additional expense and revenue in 2023. Under the 1989 account, that is where we have experienced some premium increases. Some of those were discussed during the 2023 budget hearing, specifically the cybersecurity premiums that increased on its own $72,000 over what we had previously been paying for that insurance. It's very difficult to get at this point if you can get it. So that increase was added into the 2023 budget. Just a couple other premiums that increased more than expected were law enforcement, which was an increase of $13,000, and then auto, property, and medical malpractice insurances increased between $5,000 and $8,000 each. So the revenues offsetting there are, again, the insurance recoveries of $100,000, and then participant assessments. So that's the allocation out to county departments, is offsetting, primarily the other premium increases and other expenses. We did have a couple of revenue shortfalls in the fund. $16,000 was budgeted for rebates. We usually get some rebates, but we didn't get as much as we maybe our historical trend has been. So that was not realized. And then interest earnings, as you probably hear in other departments, the market value is just underwater this year. So that did affect our enterprise funds. What wasn't allocated out to departments was being offset here by the CS fund balance, of which we're currently carrying about $2 million.
Questions, comments? Not hearing any. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Carried. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
The next resolution is number 26, proposed resolution. This also has been amended. There's an amended version on your desk. It's amend 2022 budget for year-end reconciliations, finance, and miscellaneous.
Okay. And again, I believe there was an amendment to this one as well. So first off, in account 1330 roll, those are expenses that are separated out of the real property tax department for other tax rolls that we prepare for municipalities. So we did have a little bit of additional expense there in personnel costs, but we did have less in our employee benefits to offset that. Community college tuition, total expense for the year, exceeded the budget by $26,000. And we did have a surplus in the finance account, 1310, under contractual. This was mainly due to the fact that we had planned to implement occupancy tax software in 2022, but were unable to move forward with that project in 2022. so those funds were available to offset the tuition. That project is currently underway, and we do expect to launch that software by June, July timeframe this year. Under debt service, account 9730, principal and interest, occasionally we have a difference in the schedule that's initially provided at the time of the debt is issued, and in this case, the way our payment worked out is more went to principal than to interest for that particular payment. So those two counts are offsetting. So the total payment was not different. It's just what gets recorded as interest or principal was different for that payment.
How do we explain the difference in the community college tuition? Is it just, what was the
You know,
miscalculation
it
there?
fluctuates. So, I mean, their JCC tuition is the majority of it, but we do get charges from other community colleges that may be more or less than the total budget. But Pierre looks like he wants to chime in.
Thank you. Excellent question, Mr. Chairman. We reached an agreement with JCC before we established the budget for next year, for each year. And so there is no variance in the budget for JCC, but we don't know the expense for other colleges, for students that go to other colleges until that has happened. So the variance occurs each year in from our estimate of what those expenses will be for those other colleges to what they actually turn out to be.
Mm-hmm.
How do we know what those other college expenses are if we don't go to the table with them?
Well, they vary year to year. I mean, we've always had to pay them, so generally we will budget based on a trend. But, you know, sometimes, you know, changes in the economy can drive people to go back to school or not. So it just fluctuates. So we do our best to budget like most things on trends.
Yeah.
It's an estimate.
Yeah.
You don't know exactly, you just have to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, some years
project
it's
it.
less than what we plan, and
Yeah, no, it's difficult, and I
Yeah.
I just want to elaborate the guessing game. Sometimes a budget truly is, in the sense that, you know, you're guessing who's going to go to, you know, is it, you know, is the
Fashion Institute of Technology.
Yeah, you know, or,
Mm-hmm.
you know, go to only
Four-year
JCC
versus-
campuses, maybe we don't talk with them, right? So some of
Mm-hmm.
these tuition fees could be for there, who knows, you know, so you're guessing, well, is there gonna be 5
Yeah.
people that sign up or 10?
Mm-hmm.
You know, or, so.
Well, I'm
you know.
thinking of going to the Fashion Institute next year, so.
Well, you need it.
Keep in mind.
It's gonna be a big,
They have a graduate program.
big expense there.
Yes.
But Mr. Chairman, just to add some additional information, as Chairman Shagnon indicated, we have a guaranteed floor payment that we pay to JCC, a guaranteed minimum chargeback. And in 2022, the per student charges were actually $8,800 less than the floor. So we did make an additional payment of $8,816, I believe it was, to the college to reach the promised minimum amount of chargeback expense.
So just a clarification question. So on my tax bill and all of our tax bills, there's a portion that's set aside for JCC college, right? So, and that's based on our best figures. So like this overage,
Well, in context, you know, the total budget for community college tuition is over $4 million.
yes.
So on a percentage basis, this is, you know,
So if we're wrong, the extra money really, it comes out of our, more of the county budget
well,
directly.
yeah, just like any expenditures, you know, for the year where we have surpluses or deficits at the end of, you know, whatever the net total difference is going to be an adjustment to our fund balance,
If it was positive, where does that extra funds
to the
go?
fund balance.
Yeah.
If
So
it's negative, it's a deduction from fund balance.
Dan, in that JCC agreement, was that a 3-year or a 5-year agreement? Here,
We do that year by year.
year by year?
Yes.
Okay. So if you go 1 year.
And, you know, just to, you know, further go down this rabbit hole, but We established this floor arrangement several years ago, and in the governor's budget for this year, the state has now moved to the same floor and ceiling arrangement with all community colleges that we have established with JCC. So obviously, the state learned something from Chautauqua County.
Very good.
Obvious to me, anyway.
And I also think it's worth noting that the 2022 performance of the college, I think, was certainly improved as far as student count from the prior year, because in 2021, we had to make a payment of nearly $700,000 to get the college to the floor amount. So obviously, there were fewer students attending in 2021, and we had to make up that difference. But I say at least this year, I mean, the amount of money that we pay them is about the same, but we're paying for actual students that are going, rather than having to make an extra payment just to get to the minimum.
And I thank you for the information. I just wanted to bring that up, and I will, I guess, compliment the process and all those involved, because to miss the mark, you have a 4.2, I'm trying to remember from the tax roll, it's like 4 million something. Last year was similar. To miss by nearly 35,000 is pretty good work. So, thank you. Any other questions, comments? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Next proposed resolution 27 is amend 2022 budget for year-end reconciliations EE Energy Fund.
Okay, so a few expenses exceeded the budget and the contractual costs that were planned for the energy fund. One was internet charges for communications there at the plant. That was added to the 2023 budget, so that won't be an issue for next year. So that was $3,700. There were some one-time DEC Title V permit fees of $6,200, and then the year-end adjustment for the liability insurance was in excess of $4,000. That's offset by our interest on serial bonds. When I did the budget, the actual it's actually recorded based on an accrual basis, and I budgeted it on a cash basis, so that just left some additional funds there for the interest payment that we're using to offset the contractual costs.
Questions, comments? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Next proposed resolution, let's see. Yep. I just was looking ahead and seeing how long it might take. If we have some more agenda items, we could take a 10-minute break and reconvene at 10 o'clock and use the restroom, and we'll come back and finish the agenda. So let's take a 10-minute break, and then we'll be right back.
Would be a commission. So we want to discuss if your committee feels it's appropriate to proceed to establish.
like to reconvene the meeting after a brief recess. So we'll move on with our proposed resolutions. The next proposed resolution is 28, amend 2022 budget for year-end reconciliations, emergency services.
We're reconvening,
There you go, there you go. There, you're right.
Good morning. Please, please identify yourself for the
Good morning, Mr.
members.
Chairman, committee. My name is Bonnie Peters. I'm with Chautauqua County Emergency Services. I'm principal account clerk. I'm sorry. Our proposed resolution is to amend our 22 budget for the year-end reconciliation. One of the things that I would like to bring to your attention is under the increase appropriations for the fly car of $98,000. I would like you to know that I did some more research after I met yesterday with public safety, and we had 4 full-time people that left our agency at 40 hours a week. We had 40 weeks of open positions that were filled, and a lot of those were with the overtime. That one I wanted to bring to you. Under the decrease appropriations for the 3010.8, we had a budgeted position, and when the person came in, they opted out of insurance, so that is a big part of that. Under the, again, decrease, the 3989 EMS.8, the fly car, some of our new people that came in on those 4 previous positions I spoke of opted out of insurance, so that helped there. In our increased revenue, I would like to bring to your attention the 3989 EMT. We were glad that COVID restrictions lessened a little bit, and we were able to have some CPR classes and have a EMT class, which helped that budget line. And the final one is that I wanted to bring to your attention is the decreased revenue for 3989 EMT. Prior, there was a grant for that, and that grant has been discontinued. Overall, you can see that we were able to balance this in-house.
Has there been any other fly car ambulance services adjustments throughout this year that you recall?
No, not that I can remember. I know that we spoke with you guys about our 23 budget and doing the transport. I'm very happy to say that we did get our CON approved a week and a half ago, I believe it was. So we will be able to forward with that, but that does not affect this 22.
It's 98,000, but also in past years, I've seen the number be worse.
Right.
And so I'm thankful that it is only 98,000 this year, and that we are getting a little closer on that guessing of what the revenues will be. And I hope that is a continuing trend, that this coming year, that can be 0. Any other comments, questions? Thank you. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Next resolution, proposed resolution, 29, amend 2023 budget to increase funding for the Emergency Services EMS Gear Project within the Chautauqua County American Rescue Plan Act spending plan.
So this is the one that we received ARPA money for additional equipment for our EMS, our fly cars and ambulance. When we received that ARPA, our quote was $121,200. That's what we were given. But when we actually received the items themselves were $13,455 additional, and the preventative maintenance on them for 2 years, because we missed last year's, so it would be last year's and this year's, is $14,209. So we are asking for an additional $27,664.
Questions, comments? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Carried.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, proposed resolution number 30, authorize renewal of lease agreement with Celebration Hall LLC for office space for the Public Defender's Office Family Court Division.
Good morning, Derek Gregory for the Public Defender's Office, Assistant Public Defender. Proposed Resolution 30 is asking for approval for the renewal of our lease with the Celebration Hall LLC for the Family Court. We previously had a 5-year lease. This is a renewal of that lease. The rent is not increasing. We worked closely with the Department of Public Works, Josh Rothwell, and Kristen Wright in the renewal of the lease. The lease has been shortened to 3 years to conform with our funding that we receive from ILS. So are there any
Questions, comments? Not hearing any. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Proposed resolution number 31 is amend 2022 budget for year-end reconciliations, Public Defender.
This resolution asks for a budget amendment. Our department went over in the employee benefits by $11,322. We're asking to offset that with the extra funds that we had in our contractual 0.4. It's a relatively small amount. I can't give any absolute specific explanation why we went over in the employee benefits. There's a number of explanations. We don't necessarily have a tremendous amount of control on some of these expenses. I believe they're looking at our budget performance report. One of the areas that we went over in was retirement. We're asking to offset that with our contractual.
Questions, comments? Very minimal change, so. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Thank you.
Thank you. Proposed resolution number 32 is amend 2022 budget for year-end reconciliations, Office of the Sheriff.
Good morning.
Good morning.
So this resolution is a reconciliation for our 2022 budget. As you see, we had requested an increase in appropriations due to a couple different areas. One is our dispatch, which was significant, and that partly caused by we didn't have the proper part-time staffing. We're trying to rectify that. We hired 2. We still have 3 additional openings that we're trying to fill. but hoping that that will lower this year. Our personal services for the sheriff at 3110 count, that was a large part due to overtime, and that is based more on transports. We generally would use part-time staff to do our transports. We are down significant on our part-time staff, and unable to fill those positions at this time. So we've had to use full-time, as well as we've done more transports and more hospital duties with our deputies rather than our corrections officers, and that's due to corrections officers are unarmed, and we really didn't feel it was safe to have them at ECMC as a corrections officer with no weapon, and that's the time that's most dangerous.
Question on that,
Yes, sir.
the personal services, while we're on it, is the vacancies in the part-timers continuing trend? Any specific reason you can't fill those positions? Is it?
We have no qualified candidates. Right now, we have 14 people at the academy that are from Chautauqua County. I believe about half of those are currently hired by our department, some by other departments. There's a few others that are on there that we're hoping once they get out of the academy, but I'm not holding my breath on that. I'm guessing that they will be hired full-time by other agencies just about as quick as, if they can be reached on the civil service list.
Yeah.
Thankfully, there's a few that are low enough on the list that they may not be able to be hired, and then we would hope to be able to, that's sad that, I'm hoping that they lower on the list, but I would love to see them hired full-time for their sake, but for our sake, it would be nice to have them.
Yeah.
So,
So how are we actively trying to recruit more people to say yes to taking those classes and becoming officers? You know,
the academy can be relatively expensive. They're paying 2 semesters of tuition for that. So, short of us paying for them to go to the academy, we're unfortunately going to have to be looking at that. I do like the fact that we have a pre-service academy. I think most professions get their education prior to going into that, their field. And that's part of the reason we've done this. Plus, it's been a savings to the county, to the municipalities. But I really think as we're moving forward, we have to look at those options of finding a way to offer the academy more economical for the individuals. The nice thing is it's run through the college, and some of these individuals go through, they get student aid and are able to get that paid for through student aid. If we were to run it ourselves, we don't have that option.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to continue. We've talked. It's been. I'm looking at Mr. Slagle because he might know what I'm going to say. But this last couple of days, we've had a young man in our custody, and it really has opened my eyes to the importance of mentoring, and would a newfound drive for me to say that let's get our deputies involved in some more mentoring programs. Not that I believe that this candidate that's over our office now would have been a candidate for the sheriff's office, but I think if we can get some mentoring, I probably won't see the benefit of that in my career, but moving forward, we would hope that if we can have officers doing some mentoring out in the community, they could get some interest in that way. So, other than that, we're still at a loss, and this isn't a Chautauqua County problem or a New York State problem; it's a national problem.
Yeah.
So,
Well, and it's important for us as officials to recognize that problem and try to correct it as best we can. And like you said, you may not see the benefits of it, but you recognize the importance of the work and are trying to do it. So.
when I'm retired, I want good officers out there. So I will see the benefit. I just might not see the benefit in this position. So,
Mr. Chairman?
Please.
Jim, you've done some outreach, I think, too. Coffee with the cops or whatever. And so you've done things to try to increase our recruitment.
absolutely, we're trying as much as we can to be out in the community. We feel the positive encounters with individuals, and we're thankful in Chautauqua County. I believe that law enforcement gets respect. The majority of the public supports us. Unfortunately, when you see national media portraying, they will build up the negative. And there's going to be bad individuals. There's been bad officers out there throughout the country, and that's what people see. And it's hard to get young people to say, I want to step up to this.
Your coffee with the cops program, do you serve donuts too?
Depends on where we're at. One
If
place that
you're-
we're talking
if you're
about.
in Sheridan, you serve donuts.
Well, a place where we're looking at going here with Chief Ortolano from Dunkirk, we're hoping to have some molasses cookies.
Get there early, they'll be gone.
Okay, so back to the resolution. Where was I? Oh, the contractual. That's a big part on the vehicle maintenance. Our cars, we were a year behind on replacing some of them, and the maintenance costs were increased, but we also saw an increased revenue on some insurance claims because unfortunately the deer in Chautauqua County like to jump out in front of patrol cars. So we've had too many of those crashes. And employee benefits, I think they're up across the board. Thankfully we were able to cover these shortages within our budget through decreasing some other appropriations and increasing our revenue accounts. So we're able to balance that within our own budget with no local share, additional local share. And I know the undersheriff and I want to publicly thank Kathleen. Our fiscal manager has been out on leave, and undersheriff and I wouldn't have been able to do this without Kathleen's assistance. And I tell people she did it without a hesitation. I don't know what she thought when we walked out of her office, but she didn't portray that while we were there.
I'm happy to help.
Thank you.
One larger item on the increased revenue accounts, you have looks like there's some sort of a typo going on with it also, but is it 93,275 increase in revenue?
Where are you?
It's on the back of the back pages, the increased revenue accounts, 83150 communication.
The departmental income, other public safety income, communication.
Yeah.
Maybe Kathleen.
That is due to income on inmate phone calls.
Yes. So the phone calls, we have Viapath is a phone company, so when they're making phone calls, the inmates are paying for that. Something that maybe I want the legislator to know that New York State has proposed to discontinue that program and require us to provide phone calls for the incarcerated individuals. So we're hoping that doesn't pass because that'll be a larger burden. And that goes, we're working on implementing educational tablets within the jail, and those costs would be detrimental.
What was that total budget line? Now, this is, you're using in excess of 93,000, if I'm not correct. What's that total account line?
It was budgeted at $80,000. I'm just looking up because that budget does seem a little bit low to me. I'm just checking the historical trend here. Just one second.
The reason I asked this too is because I came and toured the jail. I knew this was up for option. I saw the phones that they use, so I knew I wanted to question that one. And,
Yeah, I don't. It has been budgeted at as much as in 2019 it was budgeted at $120,000, but the actuals were only $106,000. So we did take the budget down over the last few years. The actual revenues were also high in 2021, actually more than they were in 2022. So we budgeted $80,000 and the actual revenues were $173,000.
And I think part of that would be in 2019 we saw budget higher, we had more incarcerated individuals. You go to the following years, we had no visitation due to COVID, so people were on the using the phone more. So that would, and quite honestly, some factors that we probably didn't consider and weren't thinking. I know I wasn't thinking about COVID when we were doing budget for 2020 or 2021, and how that would affect that. So.
And the budget for this year is higher. So as I said, this 2022 budget was $80,000 and the 2023 budget is 105. So we are expecting or budgeting for a higher level of revenue, but there still might be an opportunity in that line for actuals to surpass the budget again this year. Because it's still, obviously the budget is still relatively low compared to the actual performance in the last 2 years.
And if the state chooses to continue to fund it, right? You said, you
Correct.
mentioned that they might.
Or allow
not.
us to fund it that way,
Yeah.
yes.
Okay. Any other questions, comments? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, carried. The next resolution, number 33, has been withdrawn. The sheriff's wanted to make sure he got that one covered and put it in twice. Number 34 is proposed resolution, amend 2023 budget to implement the Tyler Civil Service License Project using funding from the American Rescue Plan Act.
Yes, this is a request for ARPA funding to pay for a license for our civil serve license that is used by our civil department. Currently, we have 2 licenses that are being used by 4 individuals. This would help make it more effective and efficient. And again, they're right now are playing catch up because there were so many things put on hold during COVID, and now they're trying to catch up. So we want to be able to have at least 3 people working on the system at the same time.
Questions, comments? All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed, carried. Next proposed resolution, amend 2023 budget for Office of the Sheriff.
Yes, this resolution is to purchase a portable X-ray unit that is used by our in bomb detection. Hopefully we never have to use it, but we do get various packages that we don't know what they are, and this will allow our bomb technicians to wheel the X-ray over there and do an on-site X-ray of the package. This is paid through with a federal grant, so no local share.
Questions, comments? All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed, carried. Thank you. Proposed resolution number 36, amend 2022 budget for year-end reconciliations, Veterans Service Agency.
I'm presenting this resolution on behalf of Greg Carlson, the Director of Veteran Services Agency. It is relatively straightforward, as you can see. We are looking to increase the employee benefits line, but decrease the personal services line. And the reason for the shift is that we do budget substitute wages in Veteran Services Agency, and those are an allocation of bus driver wages out of carts and into veterans for the bus drivers that are driving the veterans van. And when we budget for those expenses, we put them all into personal services. We don't really know what the split is, especially on retirement, because some of the drivers are retired and don't participate in retirement, some of them do. So, as I said, we put all of the budget for those drivers into personal services, and then there were more than expected employee benefit costs as part of their costs. So just moving out of personal services and into benefits.
Questions, comments? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, carried. Thank you. Next proposed resolution, number 37. This also has been amended. There is a copy of the amended version on your desks. Amend 2022 budget for year-end reconciliations, Chautauqua County Department of Mental Hygiene.
I'm Paul Myers, the fiscal supervisor for mental hygiene, and our first thing here is just reconciliation of budget. We This is for our administrative account, the 4310 account. We ran a little bit over on administrative wages. Apparently our county executive is working our director a little harder than we thought, so we got a $4,000 additional there, and of course the employee benefits that go along with that. In addition, we had a slight under-accrual for a hospital bill that came through the law category. And so we were able to cover all of that with a movement of contractual expenses in our administrative account. So we're not out of budget.
Questions, comments? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Carried. Next proposed resolution, number 38, to authorize extension of lease agreement with Town of Chautauqua for office space for Chautauqua County Department of Mental Hygiene.
This is the space that the administration for mental hygiene operates over in the county school building. It's an additional 2-year agreement. This is all funded by state or a federal grant. There's no local share involved. There was a slight increase, $100 a month, in the overall lease agreement from the prior.
Questions, comments? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Thank you all.
Thank you very much. Next proposed resolution, number 39, is amend 2022 budget for year-end reconciliations, Health Department.
Hello,
Hello.
Valerie List, Director of Administrative Services for the Health Department and for the TSS. So what's happening with us is pretty much what's happening with a lot of the other departments, the things you've heard. Got to the right page here. Employee benefits, we're a little bit over on. That's no surprise. I think that's happening everywhere. Personal services, we are a little over in the coroners and preschool departments. Actually, I'm sorry, early intervention department. A lot of that had to do, I'm assuming, I haven't dug into it too deeply, but we probably had more on call for the coroners, more cases than we assumed. And with the early intervention, those people do more than one job, and so they are allocated to more than one department. So that aligns with the decreases to our appropriation accounts in our regular health admin department. We're using some budget from that department to cover the overages in the EI and coroners. The contractual expenses in preschool went over budget. We've been talking about those. You know how everybody got a 10% increase. I've come and had an amendment earlier last year to amend the budget once for this, and we even went over more than expected. Then I have to put my glasses on. Then we had a overage and contractual for medical examiners and coroners. That would be for our autopsies, and that's a hefty bill. So the 25,000 overages is not unexpected. And we covered that with contractual budget that we did not use in our admin account. And finally, I'm recognizing a bit of more federal aid in preschool than expected as well to offset. So we found enough to cover everything within our own departments.
It's always a good thing. Questions, comments? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Next proposed resolution, number 40. This proposed resolution is amend 2022 budget for year-end reconciliation social services.
On this one is pretty straightforward. We were over budget in several of our different departments. This is mainly going to be a result of our direct client costs. Those are budgeted, as you've heard, they're budgeted on trends. We never know what's going to happen. At the time we were budgeting, we had no idea where we're at with COVID. So we were looking at 2019 as a pre-COVID year, and then are we going to be back? Are we not? Trying to toe that line. So actually things did pick up during 2022 and get back a little more to normal. And then, of course, because these are funded by state and federal aid, if we have additional costs, we're going to have additional revenue. And through these items being over and having more revenue, as well as some additional aid that we received for HEAP, I was able to cover all those overages and expenditures with revenue.
Any ever repercussions from the state by miscalculating some of these things, or is it just, it is what it is? You know, we're over 1.3 million. We say we need a little more, and they say, okay, we'll send it to you.
Well, I'm thinking on the health side, but no, I don't think they know. They realize the DSS system is kind of a closed system, and it starts all the way down with the caseworkers who set up, this is our client, this is what we did for our client. The bills come in, we post that to those lines they set up. It runs all the way through, we pay the bills, and then it runs all the way to our claims. So everything that we are paid for by the state runs within their system. They see what we're doing. They know that we need to take care of who we need to take care of. So I don't even know if they look at our budget. You know, on the health side, our state aid application is based on our budget. And so if we went wildly over there, they may question us, but it's something that we could amend if we had to. But I'm not sure that budget, the state is more also a cash basis situation. And in the end, our books are an accrual basis situation, so they're just watching what we're paying for as we pay for it. And as long as everything's within program guidelines and we're doing everything we're supposed to, it will be funded. They're open-ended items, most of these. They're not, some have allocations, but a lot of them are open-ended programs that are just a percentage-based situation.
Any other questions, comments? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Thank you.
Val, I'm gonna do you a favor. I'm gonna pull out of order the late resolution. I would insert that here is to accept New York State Department of Health award to support nurse-family partnership.
Thank you. This, you may remember, we've had Senate awards, 1 or 2 for the nurse-family partnership in the past. We do not ever budget for them. We do not ever expect them, but we are grateful for them because the nurse-family partnership program is underfunded. And the Senate realizes that, and so they do every so often give us some money for it. That was what happened. We just very recently were told about this, and it's very strange, but it is true that the period to spend that money is April 1, 2022 to 3/31/23. So it looks like, you know, we're never going to make it. But then again, it's only $15,000, and we have expenditures from 2022 that were not paid for any other way that we are going to claim against this. So we've already spent it. We don't have, it's not. There's no work that needs to be done in order to earn this money, that we have to rush by March to do it. This resolution is here so that you can give the county executive authority to sign the paperwork to get this happening. There is no, and we had to rush it in, and I apologize for that, but, you know, we didn't find out until the last minute, and then they wanted you to respond really quickly, so we didn't have another month. There's no budget amendment part of this resolution because it is, the expenditures were in 2022. The revenue's been accrued into 2022. So I'm not doing anything with the 2023 budget, and any changes at this point to the 2022 budget are coming through these other resolutions that we're doing.
Questions, comments? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Thank you.
Thanks, Val.
Next proposed resolution in order is number 41, amend 2023 budget to implement the Wright Park Drive project using funding from the 2% occupancy tax program reserve.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Dave McCoy, working at County Department of Planning. I'm the County Watershed Coordinator.
Cassandra Pinkowski with the Soil and Water Conservation District.
Thank you. Please run us down, or explain this resolution for us.
Okay, this resolution came about through a request to the Lake Erie Management Commission. It's for work up in the Dunkirk shoreline. However, it's larger than what our current budget for the LEMC can support, given our other obligations. So our next most reasonable alternative is the occupancy tax reserve. You could explain a little bit about what we're trying to do.
So at Wright Park, it's one of the two, I think there's only two bathing beaches in Dunkirk, and the bluff there has been constantly eroding, and the beach is relatively large, but in the 2019 storm, the surf did get to that bluff, but it's been pretty steadily eroding even without the lake getting to it. And when I was out there more recently, and the fact the ground didn't really freeze this year, we've noticed that it might be the groundwater moving through and saturating the bluff and causing it to like slough off is the more the problem than needing rock to stabilize it from the waves. So what we were proposing to do would be to put in a drainage on the road shoulder and catch that water before it gets to the bluff. And that way too, we can treat roughly 500 feet for 20,000. If we had to do that with rock on the actual bluff itself and the beach, it probably would be hundreds of thousands of dollars. So this is the attempt to do it that way, and then it will also incorporate plantings on the beach at the base of the bluff as well.
Hopefully it works.
Yes. We did a similar project. So the reason that this kind of got up more recently too is we did a similar project last year at Forestville High School where we put in drainage to catch it before it was getting to saturate. I don't know if it's a playground or the football field, but and we outletted it to a stream there. But Forestville High School has been pretty happy with that, so that's why we're thinking to implement a similar project here.
Good. Questions, comments? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Next proposed resolution is number 42, amend 2023 budget to implement the Pilot Rapid Response Emergency Fund for Erosion and Pollution Control Project using funding from the American Rescue Plan Act.
Good morning again, Twan Leenders. I'm Director of Conservation for British Stock Watershed Conservancy.
You know, each year, you get calls and requests from our various stakeholders about obstructions in the streams, and from time to time, they rise to a level of concern where they're threatening our municipal infrastructure. It could pile up in front of a bridge, but more often they're related to increased erosion and sedimentation, which is deleterious to our lakes. 2% program can only reach areas within the 2% eligible watersheds: Bear Lake, Cassaday Lake, Finney Lake, Lake Erie. There are a lot of areas outside of those general areas that have issues. We can't reach them with 2% funds. The availability of ARPA funds would allow us to do that. So in a very common scenario, we'll get a phone call. He says, there's a big snag that's threatening the bridge. Can you help us out? And first, we have to determine if it's eligible for spending. And if we do, then we have to approach the legislature for a budget amendment or use of the occupancy tax funds. And if we are approved for that use of funds, then we have to go through the contracting process, bidding process, removal process. So it takes usually a couple of months. This would be an opportunity to streamline that and gain some efficiencies by doing so.
I have a few questions. In the past, what were typical expenditures that were classified emergent?
I guess I can answer that one. So one of the examples that we talked about last night at Plain Economic Development was on Bemis Creek. I don't know how many were, but around Chautauqua Lake, there's old like trolley abutments or trolley grades. And so these were 2 concrete trolley abutments that were just there. They fell in the creek. So we had to go through the process to get funding, but it was kind of drawn out where we luckily no storm event happened. It was more so in winter. But I want to say it was lower than 20,000 to get that out. We had to break it up, and we actually used the broken up concrete to stabilize the banks there, so we didn't have to transport it out. But that's one example that we've had to come to before. And I think the point of this would be more so you could have a faster response to when things happen. Another one was up on Bemis Creek. It was upstream of a water quality improvement project we did with the county and with the Alliance, and a tree came down just upstream of it. If we left that there, it would have like made the water start going around our project, which was I think a $150,000 project. So it's stuff like that where it's a low cost to get a tree out, as long as it's not a big jam. Once it gets to be a big jam, then it escalates in price. But with the Watershed Conservancy, they're out more so looking at the streams, and then I envision it working with us when possible, or our coordinating with like our contractors, because we bid annually, or with county DPW if it's within right of way, or town DPW if it's right of ways.
Yeah, I think the greatest benefit is truly the efficiency here where, as I mentioned before, we have emerald ash borers damaging trees. Trees will be coming down. The ability to react quickly and just removing a tree before it jams into a bank and creates a log jam and creates currents going into the bank and eating away at these banks will reduce the size of a project to a removal of a log versus re-engineering and rebuilding these banks. So the time it would take traditionally to get to actually address these issues would not only increase the size of the project, it would increase the damage done. It increases the detrimental impacts on the waterways, the sediment that's being lost. These projects just become incrementally bigger as we take more time to deal with them. So as Dave mentioned, a lot of the waterways are just not eligible for existing funding streams. So having this reserve fund, not knowing obviously what will happen in the next year, where and when and how trees will go down and how fast we can get to them, and knowing how much the individual impacts are, at least it will give us in the short term a faster response rate, and it will essentially give us a much more efficient process to increase the ability to really get more bang for our buck in terms of cleaning out our waterways and keeping the infrastructure safe.
Yeah, and I support the idea of it being a rapid response in sense of emergency. I just hope that we use the process of determining it to be an emergent versus something that could go through the formal process, and also in the sense that, if we have the funds, the ARPA funds are end dated, right? So use of the funds in the sense that if we don't have emergent situations, the funds will sit there and not get used, right? So, but I assume with the potential of all these dead ash trees, as we heard in the previous meetings, that there's good likelihood that they could be used, so.
It makes sense.
That was my question. Well, I didn't have last night I didn't have a question, but I do now. 95,000, how did you guys calculate that? Was that something that
It all depends on the size of the actual emergency that occurs, right? But we, through our work in the Chautauqua River, for example, we have a pretty good handle on what a day rate is for getting contractors, cranes, and such out in places like that. So this will give us, again, depending on what the actual incident is, it's a reserve that at least we have that cushion to be able to respond quickly where needed, so we're not creating problems that are just incrementally getting bigger.
One of the first tasks we'd like to address is the weir on the Chautauqua River down by Jamestown Cardboard on South Down Street. Chautauqua County, in collaboration with the United States Geological Survey, operates two gauges, one that looks at the level of Chautauqua Lake, but also the flow out. There are a number of trees that have piled up at that weir. USGS is concerned that it may impact the accuracy and long-term operation of that gauge. This would be probably the first place we would go.
Another example that I just received some images from yesterday is that several trees fell across Goose Creek at this point, blocking access for the local residents. The trees are still rooted into banks, so if we can cut the trees above the root ball and pull the root ball back, we won't have to re-engineer the banks. We can stabilize it by just actually removing the trunk and leaving the roots in place, which would be far more efficient than waiting for several months, watching the water go behind the root ball, washing it out, and then having to actually rebuild the entire bank right there. So having the ability to respond quickly will certainly give us the chances to do much more work for, it really gives us much more bang for our buck.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments? Thank you for the clarity in some of our questions today.
Thank you.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next proposed resolution, number 43, amend 2023 budget to implement the shovel-ready sites Phase 2 project using funding from the American Rescue Plan Act.
Good morning, Mark Geis, Deputy County Executive for Economic Development. This is a project that we've been talking about for years. A couple of years ago, we were able to secure some capital projects money to do an assessment countywide of sites that are available, potentially available, that would make sense for shovel-ready sites. And for those of you who don't know, shovel-ready sites is the concept of having sites that are large enough, that are in the right locations, with the appropriate infrastructure, with as much of the due diligence, environmental, historic preservation, all that due diligence done, so that when developers contact us looking for sites, which we get probably one a week, we have the sites available to point them to. Without it, we're dead in the water. We get them again every week and probably once a week, and we don't have any really good shovel-ready sites. It comes up at every election cycle. You read about it. People writing things in the newspaper about it. We're doing something about it. We have a site that we're focusing on. We're doing a lot of work right now, and it's very expensive to run the water, run the sewer, run the road, stubbing in roads, acquiring the sites, doing all that due diligence, and we need assistance, more assistance from the county. The IDA is contributing a hefty chunk, and we're also applying for Fast New York funding through the state. So we're getting close.
How many sites are you discussing in this $4 million project?
So this is one site. This is 150 acre site. However, there are several other sites that are on our radar that we're sort of working through. There's a lot to it. We're working with the owners, doing appraisals, negotiating. So this isn't one and done. We can't just do this once and then we're good. We need to keep backfilling, because we could have somebody that comes to us, 3 months from now and says, "I want the whole site," and builds something spectacular, like an Amazon warehouse, And so we've got other sites in the North County and other sites in the South County that we're looking at, and we're working them along that continuum.
Which specific site is this?
I can't say that right now.
Okay.
Because we're in negotiations, and that would not be wise.
I'm just curious, I just have to ask questions. It's
Yeah.
$4 million expenditure
Yeah.
that's coming out of the project. So as much details as we can get out
Yep.
of it is important.
Yep, for sure.
What, $4 million is a lot for the project. What does it entail? I mean, purchasing of it, or is there costs in?
It's an
building
$11
it?
million project.
Okay.
This is $4 million of it.
Yep.
It entails acquisition of this, of the properties. It entails running water and sewer about half a mile, and the road. It involves all of the environmental due diligence, which is about $1 million worth of work to get that to where it needs to be. So this is a piece of that.
Well, and then since this is already going to be bolstering our local economy in a way that it, you know, that there'll be some work that needs to get done.
Yeah. You know, I said this last night at the PED. Newmark Frank, actually Invest Buffalo Niagara consulted with Newmark Frank as a nationwide real estate company to do an assessment of shovel-ready sites in western New York, and compared our region to other comparable regions and found that we were way behind the 8 ball in terms of shovel-ready sites availability. And within western New York, Chautauqua County was at the bottom of the list in terms of us having shovel-ready sites. We have a small parcel, 30 acres, down in Mason Industrial Park, and we have a very small parcel up in the Chadwick Bay Industrial Park, neither of which are really large enough for big projects. So this will provide that.
And Mr. Chairman, if I could just clarify, the actual cost of the project is $2 million. It
Yep.
presents in the resolution as $4 million because we have to have a budget in the general fund to send the money to the capital fund. So it will be established as a capital project, total appropriations of $2 million.
Thank you for the clarification. In just a quick synopsis, a return on that $2 million, how does the county see that? Obviously through the company that will want to use the site. Do they purchase the site? Do they, and then of course, then they move forward, and where does those funds go?
So what we would do with, when they purchase the site, we will use that funding to purchase additional sites.
Okay.
So that money will keep getting recycled and going back into the next site and the next site and the next site. How the county also benefits, obviously, is creation of jobs, both temporary and permanent jobs, taxes being paid, and general commerce in the area.
One last question. What's the longest, a property that was already available, how long have we had it available for, then it hasn't been sold?
Well, Mason Industrial Park, that property has been 4 or 5 years, but again, you know, we helped Standard build their new building down there, Standard Trucking, and this parcel, we've showed it to a number of potential developers. Trucklight was one. They were looking at potentially building a new facility there, but it just wasn't quite right for them in terms of the size, the location, and that has tended to be the case. Now, somebody that wants a facility down in the southern part of Chautauqua County, I think that site will be optimal for them. But for something like warehousing and distribution, where you know, somebody wants to be closer to the New York State Thruway, it makes sense to have something closer to the New York State Thruway. So I'm confident that we will get that 30 acres sold and built on in due time. But you know, what we're looking at is something much larger. That, you know, out in Batavia, they built and actually Steve Hyde, my the IDA director in Genesee County, has been criticized over the years for spending a lot of money on a 1,500 acre site. Okay, 10 times bigger than what I'm talking about here. criticizing. He said, you got to have it if you're going to. Well, they just announced that they're going to be spending billions of dollars on the new stamp facility there, and which is going to create thousands of jobs. So you got to have the sites, you know, of the right size. 150 acres isn't really that big even, to be honest with you, but we can do quite a bit with it.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments?
Mr. Chairman, I just want to thank Mark and his crew for taking a look at this, because I tell you, this is going to pull us out of a hole, I think, in a lapse of shovel-ready sites and stuff. And you hear that, like you say, it's always in the paper. Where are we doing? What are we going? We don't have any foresight. Well, this is the type of thing we've got to have in our pocket before we can go out and shop ourselves around. So I want to thank you, too, for doing that for us. I'm sure it's going to pay off in the end.
Yeah, thanks, Dave. And you know, and it's been a team effort, you know, between attorneys and environmental consultants and real estate. And I mean, it's been 3.5, 4 years in the making here. So we're going to keep moving ahead.
No, and I thank you for the work that you've done as well. And questions I have is just questions to rise some conversation around a topic and sensitive too, but I really promote the work that we're doing with these sites, like Dave said, so we can be prepared and ready, and also get ahead on the trend and try to promote some business in our area and our county. We really need it. So
Good questions.
all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Thank you.
Next resolution, number 44, amend 2023 budget for New York State DOS Local Government Efficiencies Grant, Chautauqua County Consolidated Code Enforcement Study.
Good morning, Chairman. Rebecca Worster, Planning Coordinator for the Department of Planning and Development. This is a pretty straightforward budget amendment. Last year, we were awarded funding through the Local Government Efficiency Program, $32,500. We need to put that funding into our 2023 budget. There's also a match required for that. The total project cost is $65,000, so we have to match that 50%. Critic will be contributing the $16,250 that we want to include in our budget appropriations and revenues, and then we already have the additional $16,250 in our current budget.
Questions, comments? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Next resolution, number 45, authorize agreement with Chautauqua Region Economic Development Corporation for Greenway Development.
Yeah, so, you know, in 2013, we did a Greenway plan for the county, and a lot of things came out of it. You know, we did sort of what stemmed out of that was the 15 miles of equestrian trails we did out over in the Boutwell Hills State Forest Land, the trail up in Westfield that runs along Chautauqua Creek, the trail in Mayville, the 1.5 mile trail that runs from basically the old train depot to Route 430. And we got a grant from the state to get easements on a proposed trail that will extend from Barcelona Harbor down to Chautauqua Lake, ultimately Chautauqua Institution, hopefully. So we've done a lot of work, and you know, kind of piecemealing it. And there was a couple of things that came out of that Greenway plan, and one was creating. It would be a good idea to create a Friends of Chautauqua Greenways, kind of a group of stakeholders that would all collaborate, you know, have a common mission, be able to go after funding, those types of things. And recently, through the Partnership for Economic Growth, we hired Jacob Bodway. Jacob's been really active. If you haven't heard about him, he's been really active working with the DPF. He was on the Parks Commission, and he has really sort of been a catalyst for sort of maintaining the trails we have. And and there's been a lot of work that's been done on these trails that were built in the 60s and 70s that haven't really had a lot of attention in many years. So this funding is a line item in the occupancy tax, the 3% occupancy tax. We had an increase in occupancy tax last year. This funding actually there was actually a line item in the occupancy tax many years ago for this very purpose, but it really it didn't get spent at that time because we didn't have the sort of influx of activity, and so we're very confident that this funding will go to a good purpose. We've got 5 lakes, 100 miles or more of hiking trails, 400 miles of snowmobile trails. We've got these really spectacular natural assets. This will allow us to take care of the trails.
For promoting all these businesses, we need things to do around there, our county also. So often we raise our hand, what are we doing today? What else can you do? You can only watch so many movies. If we have trails, we have other activities that we can be doing, then that's really good. So
we found that out in COVID.
Yeah.
During COVID, really, we had a lot of activity on our trails and lakes and kayakers and all that stuff.
For the middle of February, I'm sure that those trails are being utilized today.
Yeah.
Which a little nicer than wearing snowshoes doing it.
That's right.
Any other questions, comments? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Next proposed resolution number 46, authorized agreement with Chautauqua Region Economic Development Corporation for tourism asset development and placemaking programming.
So you're probably maybe vaguely aware, or maybe you are aware. We had sent out this, I put this in all of your boxes, in your mailboxes, about the activities of the IDA. Under the IDA is CRITIC, is the Chautauqua Region Economic Development Corporation, which is the 501c3 arm of the IDA. It allows us to do things that the IDA can't do because it's a public authority. Under CRITIC is the Partnership for Economic Growth, which is a public-private partnership that we started 4 years ago, and it's been very successful. We have 5 different work groups: business development, community development, workforce development, placemaking, and infrastructure. And under that and each one of those work groups has stakeholders that are sort of experts in that area. Anywhere from, say, 10 to 25 stakeholders that meet quarterly, and to arrive on projects that make sense for those different work groups. And one of them is placemaking. And the partnership has been very successful. It got over $1 million Ralph Wilson Foundation grant, Northern Chautauqua Community Foundation grant, Gebby grant. And these are all things that are helping support all of these projects. We pushed out almost $500,000 last year to communities for matching funds for projects, and we're doing the same thing this year. This funding, again, is because of the occupancy tax has increased. This funding will go directly to the partnership through CRITIC to that placemaking work group to work on projects that not only align with the economic development strategy that we did a few years ago, but align perfectly with the original intent of the occupancy tax. This language in this first paragraph is directly from the occupancy tax language in the law, and this is exactly what that particular placemaking work group is doing. So this $50,000 will contribute to that in order for us to do projects that improve our quality of life as it has to do with tourism. Do you want to add to that?
Just wanted to talk about 3 projects really quickly that we did in the past with leveraging funding. The Dunkirk DRI application, we put funding towards consultant work to put in that application. The Chattacoin River, Jamestown.
$10 million, by the way.
Yep,
Yeah.
10 million, Jamestown one. Chattacoin River project, you know, we've supported the planning efforts in regards to that and the grant applications. So that's been a direct success of almost $2 million plus. And then Mayville Lakeside Park this past year, we put in funding to help plan for that park, but then also a grant application, and the village was successful in getting $675,000 for a $900,000 project at that park. So it's definitely benefiting our area.
Yeah, again, 10 million DRI in Dunkirk, 2+ million for the Mayville, or for the Chattacoin River activation behind the National Comedy Center, and over $600,000 for Mayville. And it's because, you know, a lot of these communities don't have the sort of the technical wherewithal or the matching funds. And that's what we're bringing to the table. We're working with them, we're helping them sort of queue these projects up, go through the application process, helping with the matching funds, and that's what this money will continue. The return on investment is absolutely amazing.
Questions, comments? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Proposed resolution number 47, amend 2023 budget for New York State Housing Trust Fund Corporation Community Development Block Grant Award Micro Enterprise Assistance Program.
You want it?
Sure.
Okay.
Last year, we previously accepted $200,000 for the community development block grant funding to work with Cody, and all of that funding was allocated to specific projects. The remaining balance, though, is $101,340, and that is allocated but not spent yet. We just have to move that into our 2023 budget. The funding should be spent within the next few months to close out that project. The Cody has expressed interest in applying for additional grant funding. It's a really successful program. So we continue to support them with that.
And what it is forgivable loans for business startups. So it's sort of an area where, you know, the IDA gives loans, but they're typically larger loans and they're not for startups. These are for startups. They reach certain milestones and then the loan is forgiven. So it's not a revolving loan fund. It's sort of you pay it out and then it's gone. So yeah, we want to apply for more because it was quite popular, helped out a lot of small businesses.
Questions, comments? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Proposed resolution number 48 is amend 2023 budget to implement the Appalachian Regional Initiative for Stronger Economies matching funds for multi-state collaboration project using funding.
He had a number of meetings with Erie County, Pennsylvania, and Ashtabula County, Ohio, about the concept of creating sort of a tri-state collaborative to tap into the $1.2 trillion infrastructure money, and it's through the ARISE, Appalachian Regional Commission ARISE grant program. They provide funding to really sort of conceptualize and do some level of pre-engineering, if you will, for projects that have to do with infrastructure, rail, water, air transportation, that will sort of benefit the tri-county region. So, and it has to be multi-state. It can't be just us applying. It needs, and you need to do this across state lines. And we're actually in a good geographic location to be able to do that. So the cost of this study, I hate to use that word, concept plan, is $300,000 with a 63% match. So the three counties splitting that $189,000 is $63,000 each for this. The study will be divided into two parts. It will develop a formal partnership structure between the three counties focused on regional economic development. And number two, it'll identify infrastructure investments in rail, water, and air transportation modes with the potential to benefit the Tri-County region. And the goals are: one, establish a formal partnership; two, identify opportunities to invest; and three, develop a phased, step-by-step funding and implementation strategy of the partners. So this will set the stage for us to then submit applications for that big $1.2 trillion money to do whatever it is we find out that makes sense. Maybe it's our airport, maybe it's our rail, maybe it's a port. Maybe it's who knows, Dunkirk's NRG port, I don't know, but that's what this will reveal, and then we'll go after that money.
Questions, comments? We have a long meeting, but this is my opportunity to ask you a question.
Sure.
So, throughout this ARPA, American Rescue Plan Act funding process, you could have spent $24,649,000 within your department if you so chose to.
Oh, yeah,
right?
easily.
So how do you pick and choose these what is best for our area in your department? How do you choose these projects?
I
How do you
think,
choose
yeah,
these
I think catalytic projects, projects that we think are gonna be, make the most impact and force other things to happen. Number one. Number two maybe is projects that we know will result in, we know there's money out there. So what do? You can't just ask for it. You gotta do your homework and get things set and then ask for it. So I think, we're always chasing the money. That's a big deal. I think also, sort of like as we're getting requests, like we've gotten a lot of requests for shovel-ready sites in recent years, right? So that tells me, well, we need to be thinking about, creating a larger site. So it's sort of like based on what the consumers are asking for as well. And then, of course, I think maybe finally is those things that we see in our community, things like code enforcement, right? Or, housing market study is another thing that we're working on, because we're getting, requests from developers saying, hey, we'd like to do something, but do you have a housing market study? Or, you hear out in the community things about code enforcement. We know that we need to look at that. So, it sort of comes from that as well.
And then enhancing the quality of life, like you said. All of our recreation and outdoor amenities are huge in the county. So how do you attract people to want to live and work in your community while quality of life is also huge? So
thanks for bringing that up, because it is huge. We're finding out that especially young people, it's more than just how much am I going to make, what's my salary and what are my benefits. It's what is there to do there. They want to be in a place that is cool, and that's what we're trying to create here.
Any other questions, comments?
I got.
Sure.
Just sitting here. So, one of these warehouses come in, like Amazon or, how big a site is that? How many acres?
Well, it depends on how many square feet. I mean, there's different size,
But I mean, like, the one that's going on where.
like 1 million square feet.
The building.
Yeah.
How many acres do they need for that?
50 or 60.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just-
Yeah, just to give you an idea. So we could do a couple of big projects like that.
You can put 3 of them on that 150.
Well, there's other constraints of
Yeah, I know.
parking and wetlands and, stuff like
Okay.
that, but just to give you a general idea.
Mark, do you bring high-speed internet to those sites, or is that the customer's responsibility to do that?
I think it's very important to have broadband at those sites, and it's certainly something that we're looking at. It's almost as important as, well, not as important, but, water and sewer. I mean, it really
Oh,
is
yeah, in
close
today's
to.
business world, sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Thank you for presenting
you.
today.
Thank you so much,
Answers to
everyone.
general questions.
Thanks for what you do.
Proposed resolution number 49, close capital projects 2022 year-end reconciliation.
This resolution is part of our annual year-end closeout procedures. I survey all of the department heads about their projects, and they tell me whether the projects have been completed or whether they are still in progress and the budgets need to roll forward into the next year. So all of the projects on this list are ones that have been identified as completed, meaning all invoices have been paid, all revenue that might be applicable to the project has been received. So these will be closed, and then there'll be a final reconciliation process. Any remaining budgets in these projects will be returned to the funds that originally financed the projects.
Questions, comments? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Thank you. On our desks, there is one late resolution that has been put in. It's titled Authorized Transfer of Tax Foreclosure Property, Village of Celeron.
Do you have another one too?
I do not. I did have another late resolution. I moved it forward while Val was here so that she could cover it while she was sitting here. And that was the nursing one for 15,000 and some change.
Because I thought we had another one, amend 2022 and 2023 budgets for capital projects, promotion of industry department. Olivia's looking at me like, no. Okay. We can probably do that one in March. I thought we had established that would be added, but if we do it in March, that's okay.
Is that the one that we recently talked about?
Let's see. I'm not sure.
Okay.
Well, we talked about one yesterday morning.
Yes.
Well, and I thought we talked about 3 late resolutions to be added. One was Val's, one was the Celeron property, and I thought this capital projects one was the third one. Because I'm trying to look and see where it is in the approval process. I can't remember what I called it, unfortunately.
As far as its approval, if it's ready to go and you have it for us, I guess it's up to the
Well, let me
committee to.
just check, the Celeron one you need to do now, right? You're gonna do that one
We
now.
can do that one now.
Let
So if you
me-
could provide us with a copy of that
Yeah,
in the
and
next
let me
few
just,
minutes.
I'm gonna find it in the approval process and make sure it went through the whole process. so
Okay.
While you're doing that one.
Yep. So, we'll cover this authorized transfer of tax foreclosure property to Village of Celeron. And I believe our county attorney will.
Good morning. It's been a while. Patrick Slago, County Attorney. What you have before you is part of the transfer of tax foreclosure properties to different municipalities. This one is a transfer of a property to Celeron. There's a slight delay in this. It's a potential brownfield, and there's some due diligence being done on this property, but it is now ready to go forward with your approval. I believe Legislator Scudder has been in touch with the mayor at several points about this property, and I think they're eager to move forward with it.
Yeah, and this is coming in late just because everything had to come together. There was some question about some funding from the land bank, and actually the mayor did a great job of finding, it was $7,500. He found it from many different places in his budget, and that kind of eliminated that hoop that we had to jump through maybe that's not the right way, hurdle to jump over, not hoop to jump through. But he'd really like to get going on this, and I sort of assured him that it would be ready to go at our monthly meeting. So this is great seeing it here, so he can proceed.
Mr. Chairman, looking at the real property tax online, all of the delinquent taxes on this parcel were paid on October 3rd of last year. So I'm not exactly sure what that means. All of the delinquent taxes on this parcel have been paid. There are no delinquent taxes on this parcel.
So it'd be just, based on that, it would just be then a transfer of it to Celeron. There would be nothing that Celeron would have to pay toward, to the county to pay for any taxes, if that's true.
Well, how would we have the authorization to transfer it if there are no delinquent taxes on it?
Right.
Unless the parcel number is wrong on this resolution.
What is this vacant land?
Yeah, I was asking to say, where are we, where is this? I mean, in Celeron's not that big. Mr. Scudder was saying it was a
The way it was described to me is it was I'm gonna say a car dealership, a car repair, and it was going to be demolished.
You're right, there's a couple, yeah.
12 Melvin Avenue.
Yeah, that was it was, I think, 3 parcels, and this was the one that was holding it up.
Exactly, and I could check on the ID number if there's an error in the ID number that's making that. 'Cause you're correct, there wouldn't be, I mean, if there's no tax, if the taxes were paid already, there's be an issue as to why it was.
Well, and
part of
I
this
suppose that
process.
if this was part of the three parcel segment, and this is one of 3, maybe were the other ones sold and gone? I see PJ's looking to.
If I could, real quick, so these parcels, I don't know, I'm not sure the status, but I know it's been abandoned by the previous owner. He's since relocated. The building is in deplorable condition. The roof is collapsed. And ironically, they do have a developer who wants to come in and start a business as soon as this goes through. So, I know I spoke with the mayor as well, and he said we're just waiting for the county to transfer this. I'm not sure why. If it wasn't in foreclosure, I'm not sure why it's with us. But maybe it was, I don't know.
Correct.
Or maybe one of the 3 parcels was.
I just remember in the tax auction, I believe there was 3 parcels pulled out for Celeron. I'm doing my best here. And 2 of the 3 were all taken care of, and this one building demolition
Was the last.
was the stickler.
And I'd have to verify with the real property tax department to verify the number.
The SBL?
Yes, to see if that's, but I mean, that was the, kind of the thing was holding it up was this one last property. There's the issue about the potential funding for the
Yeah,
demolition.
and I believe the other 2, it was the way we transfer parcels over to.
Patrick.
Standard procedure for doing that.
How long would it take you to check that parcel number?
I can go down right now.
Go down right now before we make a motion to approve. We want to make sure that number's accurate.
Absolutely.
Okay?
Absolutely. Yeah, we want to make sure we have the right thing, so
So
I'll go down now.
I'll hold off voting on it until we make sure that
We
number
can
is
do it
correct.
next Wednesday.
Well, and we can take Kathleen's, and then if Patrick can come up and say, yes, this is correct, or this is the correction we need to make, and we can just vote on it, because we have some discussion items. We'll be here. I mean, if you want to do it real quick, we can do it. That way, we're not looming out in the open with a question that wasn't answered, but we can vote on it to move it forward, you know, and it sounds like we really want to, so let's make sure it's correct.
Absolutely, thank you.
We'll put that one on hold for a minute, and I think Kathleen has just handed out the other late resolution, and I will read that. Title: Amend 2022 and 2023 budgets for capital projects, promotion of industry department.
Now I gotta remember, now we really have to read this.
I did verify that this resolution has gone through the entire approval process. Olivia, just for your reference, it's number FIN Feb 4. and it was approved by the county executive's office on February 15th, yesterday. And I did hand out two things for you. The second one is the information that we're going to be discussing during the discussion of 2022 year-end results. So that second page, the letter-sized page, doesn't have anything to do with the resolution, but just thought I'd get them all out at the same time. So the resolution, over the years, we've had a number of capital projects in the promotion of industry department that get money from other sources, money outside Chautauqua County. And we have kind of wrestled with how to present those in the county books. And what we did was include the entire amount of the project, all of the appropriations for the project, and then we included all of the revenue. But on these projects, some of that revenue never really comes to the county. It might be participation with the Industrial Development Agency, or in one case, it was federal monies that we were anticipating getting. But again, those receipts never came to us. So Nate Aldrich and I discussed these projects and decided it was more reasonable to include in the county accounting records just the portion of the project that really flows through the county. Another example of this situation are projects with Jamestown Community College. Those projects say for example, it might be $1 million project, but the county is only responsible for $250,000. And those JCC projects, when we budget for them in the accounting system, they only go in as $250,000, because that's all that we're responsible for. And so this resolution will just change these three projects to follow that model. Change them so that the appropriations are only what we spend and the revenue is only what we provide, or what is something that is actually physically received by the county. And then with this, in keeping with this change, starting in 2023, I changed the budget exhibit that we have in the budget book. That's Exhibit E for capital projects. That exhibit now only reflects the monies that really flow through the county and does not include other sources of revenue. And what we're planning to do for the 2024 capital project process for new requests is that anyone that is proposing a project that would have additional outside funding, they would again ask for, the project would be structured around just the amount that flows through the county, and the project description would include a note that this project, we're only asking for, say, $250,000, but it's really $1 million project. It has funding from these other sources that do not go through the county.
I remember discussion around this with other projects, so thank you for trying to make this.
Because it's also a good safeguard for the county, because the way the budget is set up now, these projects, a couple of them have a large appropriation amount, and it would, I'm not saying this would happen, but it allows someone to spend more than the county is actually planning to commit to the project. And this will cap the appropriations at the amount that we plan to spend.
Sure. Questions, comments? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Carried. Patrick, do you have a solution for us or answer? Come on down.
Appreciate you giving me the opportunity. I stopped down and talked to one of my assistant county attorneys. What it is the taxes were not paid. Once we foreclose on the properties, it's a kind of an accounting system. The taxes are kind of zeroed out so that the property doesn't go into another foreclosure. And so taxes were owed on it. We foreclosed on it properly. There's about $2,000 that the village of Ceylon will pay. Those are the taxes that were guaranteed to them. So the right numbers are included on this resolution.
Does that answer your question, Mr. Chairman?
Yes,
I guess it's done, and it's just, they're all done on the same date, back in October. So it doesn't look like taxes were paid, but we're clear
It
that
just
we
was-
were able to foreclose on this, and it was done right. An accounting issue.
Darn accountants. Any other questions, comments? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
Unless there are any other surprise or late resolutions, I think we may have made it our way through those. Next on our agenda is discussion calling on the state of New York to continue to pass through Federal Affordable Care Act enhanced federal Medicaid assistance percentage funds. This was brought to our attention this month, and County Executive Wendell wanted to come in and update the committee.
Thank you, County Executive Wendell. So what you're seeing, what you will see on next Wednesday is a motion going to the governor's office. I've signed on with the other 18 county executives throughout New York State opposing this position she has taken in her budget. Now, if I'm not mistaken, we have talked to our Assemblyman and Senator, but this is a budgetary item that can only be removed by the executive or can be changed. When I first took office, now 4 years ago, or 3 years ago, excuse me, this came across our desk as EFMAP, and I first learned about it. And what it is that Medicaid money that comes to us through the federal government. The governor now wants to take that money from the counties. They want to intercept to the tune of $1 billion total, which would put a $4.3 million hit to Chautauqua County. That is something that we have vehemently opposed, and bipartisanly county executives across the state have opposed this. We have been talking to the governor, previous administration, now this current administration, as early as October of this year, and we're moving forward. We felt 2 weeks before the budget came out, there was radio silence from the governor's office, and it stopped. The information we were given was somebody slipped this in the budget before it went out. The governor wasn't aware it was there. Many of us said if somebody slipped something in our budget we weren't aware, they probably wouldn't be working for us anymore, to the tune of, crippling counties across New York State. This is a position endorsed by NYSAC. Mike Zerlo, our president, who's a county administrator, has opposed this. NYSAC's executive director, Steve Aquario, has been very adamant as to his direction moving forward. So this is something that really, it's a $4.3 million hit to our county in particular. But just a piece of information as well, this budget is so detrimental to counties. One of the pieces they want to do is Article 11, and correct me, Kitty or Kathleen, of our foreclosure process, which means, for example, and Todd Button and I had a discussion about this, many times a property goes to foreclosure, as you just heard, and the county's owed money, $2,000. Maybe we sell it for $500. So we're taking a hit of $1,500. And multiple properties across our foreclosure have resulted in a loss for the county. On occasion, and we've been very fortunate in this most recent tax auction, that we did see profits on some of our properties. The governor now wants to take away Article 11, which will then give the profits of those foreclosures back to the property owner. Therefore, you don't pay your property taxes. You owe $50,000. The property sells for $200,000. The governor now feels that the former homeowner should be entitled to the $150,000 profit that the county would receive. Ludicrous, to say the least, because most times we do not profit on these foreclosures, as you all know, those of you who've been here. That's really another piece financially that could impact counties greatly. The second one is a deviation, or actually a take-back of our home rule capabilities. For example, in the governor's push, this new home compact she built, or home building compact, of 800,000 new units in New York State. I think they said 600 projected for Chautauqua County, or is what she's expecting us to build. If a developer comes into a community, let's say, into Mayville, and they want to bring in housing, and they go through their presentation, and the town says, nope, this isn't what we want, this isn't the type of development we want, The governor now wants to form a statewide committee, and that developer will then be able to go to this committee, ask them if they would overturn, and in fact can overturn, and allow that developer to put up a development that is in opposition of the town and or village that they're going to put it up in. So this confiscation, if you will, of $4.3 million is small. It's a hit to us. Don't get me wrong. I shouldn't say it's small. It's a big impact. It's $1 billion across the state. But this is just one of the things that's happening in this budget. So again, I want to bring that to everyone's attention. But $4.3 million is significant. That's something we have to come up with in the next year, because all of our budgets, whether you're Erie, Suffolk, Nassau, Onondaga, Monroe counties, Orange, Broome, Albany, we already set our budgets. This is going to impact every single county tremendously. And at this point, we have seen no response from the governor. So I would urge you all to sign on to this motion. It is critical to the county. It's critical to it. And, as Steve Aquario has said, the executive director of NISAC, these are draconian measures, and it's now taken us 20 years backwards in what we have been working with the administration in Albany. Questions?
This law, it's a federal pass-through. The federal, the way it's written or the way they hand out that money must not be so specific to say that the money should be distributed to the counties in specific. So is there any chance of being able to have the federal guidelines of that distribution more emphasized to circumvent what the governor's trying to do if it passes, right?
Hopefully, but if you also pay attention to the news, our governor is in, hit lockstep with the current administration in Washington. So
Sure.
I would hope that they would see to that, and I would hope that Congress would see to that if it goes that far, that they'd be able to keep that. But this is just another situation of where the state administration and the governor is clawing back money that should be going to counties. This is a problem we've been facing. I'm sure every county executive has faced this, but more so now. And this money is not going into the budget directly, it's going into the budget reserve, which is really more of a slap in the face to counties. So it's critical, very critical in our operation.
Questions, comments? Discussed.
PJ, she has, 30 days to make changes to her budget before it goes to the Assembly and the Senate?
I believe so, yeah.
Something like that?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's the importance of this motion.
Right, it's critical, yeah, it's very critical.
Gotcha.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The next item, number 51, has been moved till next month. Is that correct? So in lieu of our long, lengthy agenda today, we decided to move that till next month, and Kitty will be gladly presenting that. But it didn't get them off the hook for discussion of the year-end 2022 budget results. So Kathleen and Kitty will come forward to discuss that.
Apologize, there's a lot of them. So we'll wrap up with a lot more numbers. The page that you have in front of you, we've used this format for several years. It identifies our budgeted local share in the general fund and then some significant variances from our budget. So just to give you an overview of what we're looking at here, and these are results, they are as of midday yesterday. I did find out last night during the legislative meetings that we have an additional coming. It's already posted, it's just not included in the results that we're looking at right now. So you can see kind of up in the top in the center, it says surplus/deficit. The amended 2022 budget was a deficit or a use of fund balance of $1.9 million. That's what we were planning for 2022. The actual result right now is a surplus of $16.6 million. Or, in other words, our revenues are $16.6 million greater than our expenditures. And then below that, you see the number 18.5 million. That is the variance to our budget. So we have a favorable result $18.5 million better than what we anticipated for 2022. You'll also see it's kind of going across, and I say, well, I'm going to talk about what each of the columns are, and then we'll go through the details in the different rows. The next column, it says the effect on 2023 local share. Not a lot of information at this time in this column, but it does show us that for 2023, our anticipated use of fund balance is $4.2 million. And then we also included a comment or a column on the dashboard. As you know, we've been talking about projected use of fund balance throughout the year. And so the next column shows what we projected in a lot of these items as of November 20th. And the final column there is how much the current results differ from our projected performance. I'd also just want to stress that the results are not final yet. These are preliminary. We are getting pretty close to final results, but I was looking at some more of the departments on a finer level of detail just last night, and I'll continue to do it the next couple of days. And I've already found a couple of minor changes that we need to make. Both of the results I found actually were favorable, revenues that need to be added and are not yet included. Not big dollars, but there will still be some changes as we finalize the results. So any questions on what's included on a top level here? Looks like no. So then just moving down the page, we've identified some of the major variances from budget. And these items most of these items we track every year, so they're not, most of them not new. Property taxes, that's the big item on the page, 5.2 million better than budget. And that is because over the last couple of years, we had been deferring property tax revenue because our delinquencies were so high. Due to the auction this year, we were able to clear up a lot of those delinquencies, so we were able to bring back revenue out of the deferred classification and realize it in 2022. Sales tax, another good year in sales tax. We have now completed or received all of our payments for 2022, and we're coming in $4.4 million over budget. Interest and penalty income offsold by the loss of sold properties. That's another big positive this year, just because, again, with the auction, after 3 years of no auction, there's a lot of interest and penalty income that we were able to recognize this year that we couldn't recognize until the properties were actually sold. The tribal compact, that one we have been talking about for a while, that we received $3.2 million earlier in the year, and just recently another payment of $454,000. Mortgage taxes came in $275,000 ahead of budget. That's one item I did put in the effect on 2023. We expect that to be a positive effect for this year. The budget for this year is $2 million. So the budget for this year is more than it was in 2022, but the actual result this year we expect could be more than budgeted in 2023 again. Jail inmate revenue, that is $240,000 ahead of budget. As you saw during the amendments, though, the sheriff is planning to use some of that revenue to offset the overages in the sheriff's organization. So that number isn't, and actually earlier in 2022, the sheriff's office already used part of the surplus. So that number really isn't as big as we thought it might be. Or I should say, the revenue is big, but we've already had reassigned some of that surplus to other areas. But I would expect there to be a surplus again in 2023, because the budget for 2023, we did increase the number of federal inmates from 35 to 40. So the 2023 budget assumes 40 inmates per day, but the actual for last year was 50 inmates per day. So I think that there is, again, some room for opportunity in 2023. Another element that I did not factor into that estimated surplus in 2023 is a change in our daily rate that we're paid. I don't think it's been finalized yet, but I know that the sheriff has asked for an increase in the daily rate, and I think he's going to get it, but I don't know for sure. Social services, the first line there does not include surplus due to Medicaid. And that is the number that's going to change. When I did this earlier yesterday, social services local share was $363,000 better than budget. But as of last night, we'll be adding to that, and their surplus is now estimated to be close to $1.7 million. There's an additional $1.7 million in Medicaid. And again, that number, our Medicaid actual versus our adopted budget, there's more of a surplus, but some of that surplus has been used throughout the year to cover some other overages. I didn't put anything in here for 2023. There's a lot of volatility on this issue as far as other Medicaid payments, whether we're going to get money from the federal government or not, or the state's going to ask us to, going to take some of that federal money. So a lot of discussions going on with that, but no clear answers as far as what might happen with Medicaid for 2023. So there's a lot of federal monies out there that is owed to the state, but we don't know what's going to happen with those. Public health is also currently running at a surplus, mostly due to state savings in staff costs. The 2023 budget, the local share budget for public health, is quite a bit higher than 2022's budget. So at this point, I would not anticipate that we would run a surplus in 2023. The fly car, I'm sorry, I kind of jumped over one of the other deficit items that you see, the sheriff. As we talked about earlier, there are some significant overruns in the sheriff's organization. That's the $415,000 figure.
What are those overruns?
Mostly, that's just in the 3110 department, just the sheriff operations. So mostly due to the overtime that we talked about, vehicle maintenance, fuel expenses. The fly car program, unfortunately, again this year, the local share has again exceeded budget by a wide margin. The only piece, I guess, of sort of encouraging word I could offer on this line item is that we continue to increase the budgeted local share for the fly car. The budgeted local share in 2023 is $1.5 million, and that's a little bit more than the local share for this year. So maybe next year. Maybe next year it will run within its budget. We've been saying that for about 5 years. The public defender, right now, grant revenue is a surplus of almost $700,000 because there were 2 years of the Harrell Herring grant that we did not accrue in 2021 because they were so far behind in their claiming. We have received payment for years 1 through 4 of the grant. That would be through, for performance through March of 2022. So they're getting reasonably current on that grant. And so we do have a surplus this year because of revenue that we did not recognize last year and we have now received. Opioid settlements achieved this year $902,000. None of that was budgeted. It's a small number, but just to make sure it's recorded, COVID reimbursements from FEMA. So far this year, $88,000 we received that was not budgeted. We are still waiting for a couple of our claims to be paid. So there's there's another couple $100,000 out there. I probably should put that in the 2023 column. I will get that number nailed down a little bit, but we do have one major claim that we are waiting for, and we have not included that revenue in any way anywhere yet. Next one is a big negative, $4.8 million. This is the paper loss on marking our investments to market value. So that we do reflect that on our books, and that is included in the results. A downer in investment earnings, in the investment earnings line of $4.8 million. The next line, that's just other miscellaneous variances. Fortunately, they are positive that I have not specifically identified. So the total there, and this is in the general fund, we're looking at a surplus of $16.5 million. The next items below that are things that are currently in our results but will be transferred to reserves. So they will not be in the general fund balance at the end of the year. The first line is interest earnings. Now, we've talked a couple times about how we're changing how we display the calculation for interest earnings. So if you look at our interest revenue line in the financials currently, it would show a loss of about $3 million. But that $3 million, it's a combination of the mark-to-market performance and interest that we actually, cash interest that we do earn. So we've talked about this a couple times, but we're planning on taking that cash interest earned and transferring it to the capital reserve. And so the amount of money that we've actually earned is $1.5 million. So we are going to transfer that to the capital reserve. We have a little bit of a deficit in our 911 accounts, and again, that deficit will kind of come out of general fund results and go into be a detraction to those reserves. And then the last item is the occupancy tax surplus. Fortunately, the two occupancy tax departments, the 2% and the 3%, they have a surplus of $518,000. And so right now that's included in the results that we're looking at, but we'll take it out and apply it to those particular reserves. So each of those reserves is going to grow about $250,000. So that brings us down to the overall variance of $18.5 million. And again, that's what you would see right now before any transfers to the reserves. You can also see in the couple columns over under the dashboard projections, we have been projecting through the year a surplus of about $14 million. So, it's a great result. It's a little bit better than we thought, mostly due to the property tax line is better than we had projected. And the last comment that I would make is that we still, as I said, have quite a ways to go, but we'll be making a significant contribution to general fund balance. And that contribution it's going to put us very close to the recommended maximum 15% of revenues. Yeah, we're definitely going to be in that ballpark. So
A few years ago,
we're at 5.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
Yeah,
Below 5%.
barely at 5.
4.8.
Yes, yeah. So we've
That's
come a long
fantastic.
ways. Yeah. So, questions, Mr.
Kathleen,
Wilfong?
I just want to say thank you so much for putting something that is very, very difficult in front of a bunch of guys and ladies that actually makes sense and something I can follow along. And I'm going to take this home. When people ask me, I've got something going here.
Yeah.
Appreciate this.
Well, you're welcome. And actually, this is the format, Kitty developed this
Thank you,
format,
Kitty.
so
Thank you.
she created it many years ago. But yeah, it is, it's a good tool for us to really kind of boil down a big picture to one page.
Perfect.
So,
Homework for you.
Yeah, I got it.
Chairman, one question. Kathleen, as far as the tribal compact payments, is the state caught up with their payments to the counties? I mean, you mentioned we just received 400,000 here this past fall. The 3.2 that we received earlier, I think, was for like 3 or 4 years.
Right, was a catch-up, yes.
Yes. So in 2023, do we expect another payment, or is the state caught up?
We did budget for the annual payments,
For 2023?
yeah, we did.
Okay.
And typically, like, when we were getting the payments, it would come in 2 increments during the year.
I'm just checking, let's see, we received, the most recent payment we received, it's $168,000. And so we received the big kind of catch-up payment in April, and then we've received additional payments in August, October, and December. The December one is an accrual, but, anticipated receipts for the rest of this year. And we have budgeted $725,000 for next year.
Okay.
And I say we have been getting around $150,000 a quarter.
Okay.
So the
Right.
725 may be a little
Okay.
strong, but yeah, we are continuing to we are getting those payments now on a regular basis.
Good.
Depends on how many times I'm up there, Terry.
Go more often. Thanks.
You're welcome. Any other questions?
Good news for the
Yeah.
county in sense of the surpluses that we've seen, and that's helpful for our budget. And I should certainly hope that going into our budget season for next year, this will be beneficial for all county residents. And
Absolutely.
So I'm glad that we were able to see surpluses in these areas. And like you said, some are not necessarily accounted, some are simply, we just haven't been paid for them yet, so it's good that we are getting them. And it's better news, because you said the one social services is changing from 363 to 1.7, so it's probably closer to, add another $1 million, million and a couple.
Yeah, all good results. So.
Any other questions, comments, anything under other? I think we can do more if we really want to. I'd entertain a motion to adjourn if anyone's so inclined. Oh.
Quick. I just was gonna say, like,
Sorry.
for next month too, I'll hope to have prepared an update on our 5-year projection, with the preliminary results, so that'll kind of give you the 5-year.
Thank you.
Okay.
I'll second that motion to adjourn.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
You made the motion.
Carried. Thank you.
I don't